Hello, everyone. I'm Reaper PC. To my left is Datus Venom, and below the both of us is BiggPicc. From our guest of the evening, BiggPicc from the BiggPicc podcast. Check him out on YouTube, BiggPicc. One word, search for that on YouTube. Datus Venom is Datus Venom on everything, and I mean everything from CompuServe to AOL, SegaNet, PSN, YouTube. That just look for that name.
Trademark.
Here we go.
Trademark.
And you're already on my channel. If you knew how to find me, you know how to find me everywhere. Let me catch up with those that are with us before we start rambling. We have Lucky Gadget Girl, Queen Mouse, Autumn Reed. Hello to y'all. We'll answer questions or comments as you drop them, but we're going to get right into it. This is What If Gaming episode 2. What if Nintendo had released the Nintendo PlayStation? That is that device right next to BiggPicc. That is a real thing. That was what was supposed to come out once upon a time. Brief history for those not familiar. Sony back in the 80s, 90s, before the PlayStation, was a hardware partner for other console manufacturers. They supplied sound chips, they supplied motherboards, they supplied the kits for the M to then make their own consoles. Nintendo was in contract in the late 80s with Sony to produce a CD add-on for their forthcoming Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Why? Because Sega was doing the same thing. Sega CD says hello. Actually, it's saying hello
right behind you.
right there. Attached to my Sega Genesis. So they were prepared to do the same thing. But there was an issue. You take one of the leaders in consumer electronics at the time, bar none, Sony, and you take the undisputed leader in home video games, Nintendo, and you put them in a contract together and say, come to an agreement. They had a hard time with that. As you can see, a prototype was made. Sony was far along in the development of this hardware. That thing accepted SNES cartridges. It accepted Sony Super CD format, I think was what they were going with at the time. However, for anything that was going to come out on CD, Sony wanted some of that lucrative licensing costs. And by that, they wanted the majority of it. And they also wanted to be the ones in charge of pressing the discs. So they were going to make money not only on the hardware front, they're going to make money on the licensing, and they would make money on the fact that every game dev would have to come to them to press the disc. Nintendo had control almost of the entire cartridge ecosystem up until this point. They didn't want to lose that. Thus came their impasse. I want to say 90, 91, somewhere around there. Sony at CES is like, hey, we have this new thing coming out. Here's the prototype. We are contract with Nintendo to release the Nintendo CD add-on. I forgot their name at the time. It may have actually been PlayStation. I'm not sure at which point the PlayStation logo or trademark came in.
Or just, I think also could have been like just the extension or the SNES-CD.
Yeah, SNES-CD. It was something along those lines.
Yeah.
And within a few days, Nintendo does a press release at CES announcing Philips, Sony's major competitor, as their CD partner. Sony didn't know that their contract was over till Nintendo made that announcement. And that's why you will have Nintendo, who's notorious for keeping their properties locked down. The Philips CDI console actually had some Zelda titles. It had a Mario title. Like, they had some offshoot spin-off games because they had this cross-licensing agreement. Sega CD didn't do the numbers that threatened Nintendo, so Nintendo never launched their CD extension. And as we know, they never went CD even for their next console after the SNES. But now you had Sony left with the bag. Like, we did all this R&D, we talked to devs, we have CD fabs ready for pressing discs, we have all of this invested. We're too late to enter the 16-bit console. But with some modifications, get rid of the Nintendo trademarks, we can see you for the next generation. We'll show you to stand us up on a contract, and thus entering the behemoth that is Sony Consumer Electronics, entering the console space. The rest of that is history as we know it, right? We know how that played out. I think everybody on this panel got a PlayStation 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So we know what happened.
Two. One Japanese modded, one regular.
Nerd. Okay. So now my question to the audience and to the gentleman on the pod. What would the landscape have looked like if circa 89-90 Nintendo and Sony had come to terms and actually put out the SNES-CD, SNES PlayStation, whatever it was to be called? What if that contract had continued? What would the rest of the 90s had looked like?
So, first, I want to say that one of the things that was really difficult for most developers that they didn't like about Nintendo was the lock on their license, right? And like the pricing for that. When they made a game, a large chunk did go to Nintendo and people started to lose out. Hence why Square Enix really had a hard time with Nintendo for a while. One of the games that made the PlayStation a hit was arguably Final Fantasy VII. One of the best RPGs ever made, right? So like to have, or actually, if we had Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo PlayStation or the SNES CD, that would be a huge difference. So you're going to have a lot of developers who are still grumbling about licensing, but since it's a Nintendo console, it's being pushed and being sold fairly well. Now, with the PlayStation, if Nintendo had the PlayStation, let's say, there's a vacuum there, right? So what the Saturn would be, Saturn may have sold a whole lot better if the PlayStation did not exist.
That's true.
Because with that vacuum, you're going to see a lot more games being evenly distributed. And again, remember what my first point. If developers are fed up with licensing, and Sega's a lot looser, a la Mortal Kombat, right? And they appreciate the artistic freedom that developers have, you're going to have more of what we see now, where we see more adult-like titles, more of those titles on the Saturn and developed for the Saturn, but less so for the Nintendo PlayStation. So Battle Arena Toshinden, maybe. I don't quite see it, but maybe. Remember, also Nintendo is really very protective about their image. A lot of games that are family friendly are likely going to be would have been the ones that made it to PlayStation, to the Nintendo PlayStation. I don't know what that would have looked like. In terms of like you could any of those hardcore games that we are used to playing,
Mm-hmm.
Metal Gear, I don't know.
Saturn.
Yeah, it would have probably been made for the Saturn.
Big Pick.
I agree with Dave. Those games would have came to pass, but they most likely wouldn't have been on a Nintendo platform. Um, if you think about the games that Nintendo and Sega shared back in that time, the games looked very different. Like Mortal Kombat. On Sega, Mortal Kombat, there was what you had a code you could put the blood in, stuff like that. And Super
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo, there wasn't even an option. So Dave's right. They are very protective of their image. Um, Other games like I don't know if y'all remember RoboCop versus Terminator. Look at how different they looked on both systems. Um, Another good game. I don't know if y'all ever played. Like I'm showing my nerd now. Jurassic Park.
Mm.
Jurassic Park on Sega. Look how brutal that was. And I don't know if y'all ever played it for Super Nintendo. It was like an overhead view, and it was real nice. It was real kiddie. It wasn't. I think they had bullets, but I think the dinosaurs would explode or whatever. Not like that. Just like into a cloud of dust. Whereas on Sega, you could actually kill the dinosaurs. They'll slump over and be like, oh, like
Yep.
blood and
Bleed out.
if ever you right, if ever you made it to a part where you got taken out, where you got killed, they would show them eating the character or whatever, chomping on them, stuff like that. So some of those games, they I don't think they would have came out for a Nintendo system, but I think they still would have existed. I agree with Dave. I think Sega would have had a big comeuppance at that time because at that time, gaming started to shift towards teenagers and adults. Like the kids had their time, and that wasn't in the '90s. That wasn't a big sale, and I think that's why Sony did so good with the PlayStation. They had a good mixture of both, children games and teen/adult games. If you think about games like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Gex,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like they had their kid lineup, but the real money was in the Resident Evil, the Tomb Raider. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's just hard. Just that it's a great question, but it's just hard to think about that if Nintendo kept that concept. I don't see them if they kept the concept. I don't see them beating out Sega.
Yeah,
I
Sega.
feel like Sega would have just zoomed right past them. I think that would have even helped the Dreamcast. I think Nintendo would have fell so far behind by not picking up the games that would have helped them take off.
Mm.
I agree.
That's a good. That
Uh,
that is highly possible.
so think
Mm.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, most of the folks I hung out with back in the day, when they were playing the PlayStation, they also watched movies. And it was a huge thing. It was a big deal to watch a movie on your console because we were watching VCDs at the time. So you had to have a mod on the back of your PlayStation, and you would have to acquire the movies,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And burn them to a couple of discs, and then pop them in on cue, when it's ready. But like with the Dreamcast was about a year out, or actually, it was it was a year out, I think, or 6 months out from having a DVD player. So for the Dreamcast to have the DVD player in it and remember, Sega was with the Sega CD, it already was a media player. So people were happy to have this CD player and have their music playing in the background and stuff like that. To actually have a multimedia station be your PlayStation, be your Dreamcast. Um, till this day, if I'm not mistaken, most developers, even Sony at this fact, they are confused with the numbers that the PlayStation 2 did. It wasn't because of the titles. It was because it was a cheap DVD player.
Yeah. At the
Right.
time, so for context there, at the time, there was a license fee, if I'm remembering correct, being paid to the rights holders for DVD tech for every DVD player being put out. So it kept the prices inflated. The PlayStation, however, was developed in the console mindset where we will take a hit on the hardware so we recoup on the licensing fees for the games. That's not a pricing model that any DVD player had. So what happens there is the PlayStation comes out cheaper than them because it's meant to be cheap to compete with the other consoles in that same, setup. It's part of why Sony messed up with the PS3 because it was too expensive. They forgot that part of what made the PS2 successful wasn't just the Sony name, was because it was the cheapest of that type of media playback. Okay, so y'all are saying history goes along. Sega becomes the teen adult focus hardware. Nintendo stays the kids platform.
Yep.
Here's something to think about. And we've seen this. Nintendo sits on hardware for a very long time, on average, right?
Yep.
Except for the Wii U. And the Virtual Boy. But other than that, they stay on hardware for a very long time. If they're now doing 16-bit with CD because they released their CD add-on for the SNES, and Sega has their Sega CD, do those two things now proliferate better sounding and perhaps better looking 16-bit games, which then delay the start of the 32-bit era?
I could see that. I could see that because back then you got to remember when consoles were made, they were made with the idea of in mind of being a 10 to 12 year console. They didn't want to just like every 5 years like now, how it's all about staying current. Well, back then it wasn't about staying current. It was about staying strong and just dominating the market. So I think that they could have held that back for a minute. I agree with that. I think they could have held that back, got some more devs in, made some more games. They could have stretched it. They could have stretched it
Stretch
out
it?
instead of um like bringing it about so quickly. I think a lot of like Sega and Nintendo, they were scrambling. Once Sony made their move, then everybody was trying to keep up with them. We're not going to say the system right now that's still trying to keep up with them,
Yeah.
but that's what they do. Instead of them taking care of their fan base, they just trying to one up Sony all the time, and that's why they fail. And I also think that's why Nintendo has the longevity it had. It never tried to one up anybody, never tried to keep up with anybody. Even when Sega started to get prominent back in the day, they never tried to top Sega. They just did what they did, and that's why they're still around today.
Yeah.
Console wise.
I think the last time they tried to one up anybody was the GameCube. And I think they felt the kickback on that. Like they tried to be the graphics powerhouse. They tried to pay to get exclusives, and I don't think it paid back in sales. So they went back to their tried and true formula.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if we end up with a 10-year, so let's go with the 10-year mark, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So 89 was really, let's start with the Genesis, right? 89 was the mainstream 16-bit.
Yeah.
So then that would last to perhaps 98, 99, which tracks because the N64 dropped what year?
Yeah. Same year.
So it's
PlayStation.
like
I remember. Oh my god, it was so bad.
It had to be 90, 95, 96, huh?
It was like 96.
I
96,
remember
okay.
standing
So they would have
online.
pushed it just 2 years. That's not much.
Yeah. I remember standing online, getting ready. I still have the T-shirt. I pre-ordered my N64.
Wow.
Standing online, waiting for my N64, and as I'm online, they had these video stations. This is the you remember the Toys R Us on Times Square.
Dating yourself.
And exactly, because it no longer exists. So seeing the monitors there, and I'm like seeing Battle Arena to Shinden and some of these other games. I was like, and immediately in my brain, I was like, did I make a mistake? Buying an N64? I'm like, oh man. But I swallowed it. I was like, yo, I made the right choice. You know, got into my head and was like playing this game. And at the same time, I'm like, man, this is not it.
Damn. Damn. They weren't selling to you? You weren't the audience?
I was drinking the Kool-Aid and still like doubting. You know, I was doubting in my head. I'm like, yep, it's the greatest thing ever. It's great. It's great. And in my head, I'm like, it's not great. Not at all.
I actually liked the Nintendo 64, but my issue was that I played that before I actually played the PlayStation. So that's how I got caught up. So one of my friends, he had a Nintendo 64, and I would go to his house, play it all the time. And Christmas came around, and I got a Nintendo 64. All my friends got PlayStations. So they was like, when we get back to school, they're like, what you got? What you got? It's like, man, why did you get a Nintendo? I was like, it's the best system. I like it. You know, best graphics. They're like, man, check this out. And I remember I went to my friend's house. He didn't even have a game. He just had the console and he had a demo disc that he got out of Pizza Hut. He got a demo disc.
Pizza Hut. Yo, I forgot about that.
I'm telling you, and it had it was the one though. It was the one that everybody knows with Parappa the Rapper on it.
Yep.
Tomb Raider, Armored Core, Cool Borders. Everybody had that demo disc. Like that. That's just like that's probably the most famous one. And I played that demo disc, and I was like, "Ain't no way I'm keeping this Nintendo." Now at the time, just the demo disc. At the time, my Nintendo, it came from Walmart. You could go back and switch it. They were the same price.
Man.
So I had the box and everything. I just bought it. I was like, yo, I don't want this. It's like, what's wrong with it? I said, it ain't a PlayStation. The dude was like, I got you. Switched it up, got the PlayStation. And the following year, the next Christmas, I got a Nintendo 64. I waited on it, but that was, PlayStation, it just, when it dropped, man, PlayStation dropped like Jeezy first album, bro. It came out, it was too official, man. Everybody had the PlayStation. Yep. And that like I say, I don't see Nintendo. Had they kept that concept, I just don't see them. I don't see them like putting the full potential into it, you know? Well, I don't, you know, Nintendo drops and they give you the same games that drop. It's a Mario Kart, a Star Fox, a base Mario game. You know how they, you know, a Metroid. And that system was revolutionary. I'm not gonna say it had more power, but just like the video that played with it, like the cutscenes, live cutscenes, like it was just something that changed gaming, and I just don't see Nintendo pushing it to the brink that Sony did. But Sony also had in their favor a lot of developers that was ready to use that hardware.
I mean,
they had so many developers that they said, okay, do your thing, do what you do. And for people that think they know PlayStation and the impact, they can tell you he had a jailbroken when you don't even know about the games that didn't come here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's people love the Dragon Ball games today, but they don't know about 22 and they don't know about Tabal #1. They don't know about games that didn't even
Not
make it
not
to the
him looking for it. He looking in a crate.
Looking for it. You know it.
You made him look in the crate.
I got the ball #1. I was like,
see,
yo.
see, that's what I'm saying. Like if you knew somebody that had the jailbroken one, then it kind of shows you like why they're where they're at today. But I just don't see Nintendo, and Nintendo has that too. They have games that that stay in Japan that don't come here, but nothing to the likes of a Tabal or Ranma and a half, or what I'm saying. It's so much that people just don't know, and I don't see Nintendo maximizing that.
So
So
check this out. This was the 5th generation
Mhm.
consoles, right? In my house, and at 94, I was like full grown ass man working, right? In my house,
Old. Yes, we
I
get it.
had my 3DO, my Panasonic 3DO, had
Mhm.
the Sega Saturn, skipped the PlayStation. I was like, nah, I'm good. I got, I got a Saturn, and I went to the N64.
Mm.
Now, think about that. Philips fell off. We
Yeah.
all know that. They all disappeared. So it would have been a 2 console, market.
Race.
It's weird when you think about that. It would be a Nintendo's PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Like, weird.
It's kind of where we ended up now. The same thing happened. It would have just happened sooner.
True.
Well, no, you still had the luxury console market though. Neo Geo.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they almost don't count, but they were there.
they were. And yeah, I'm looking at like 5 of my cartridges back there. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you talking
200.
about
that.
like King of Fighters and Metal Slug and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the luxury
Yeah,
market.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this kind of niche luxury super price market back in the 80s into 90s. It died off for obvious reasons. It's hard to sustain profit on that, but okay. So BiggPicc touched on the technology a little bit. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
If all devs are now concentrating on 16-bit CD-ROM based games for a number of years, I've heard people say that we probably only saw a bit of it because we saw arcade ports of some racing games back then. We saw Star Fox with an extra chip push the boundaries. We saw the Batman games on the Sega CD push the boundaries. We saw some pseudo 3D and actual 3D stuff starting to pop up. Was there more room on the 16-bit roadmap just by having a CD-ROM? Was there some potential we missed out on seeing that mature a bit more? Or do you think we saw
I
everything there
think
was to
so.
see?
No, I think so. I think that can be said about every gen, because when you first roll it out, you like, okay, we want to show you an upgrade from last gen, but we can't show you the potential, like the highest potential, because then you're going to expect that every game, every release, every developer. So I think they kind of like just. I'll give you a perfect example. When the PlayStation 2 dropped, I remember um I remember the emphasis on graphics. I remember the video that I watched about Metal Gear Solid 2. Is Sons of the Patriots. I don't know if y'all remember that video. You probably can go on YouTube and check it out now, but it
Yeah.
it showed like it showed Snake on the boat. Remember, he's on that boat. They showed the rain. They
Yep.
showed him actually getting like his clothes wet, him sneezing, stuff that they kind of touched on in the Metal Gear Solid
Yep.
on PlayStation 1. But actually, it was actually like, yo, if you stay in outside the boat long enough, if you stay in the cold long enough, he's gonna really get sick. You're not gonna be able to be quiet. You're not gonna be able to take a quick pill and get rid of it. those were the things that they kind of teased at first, but the system actually was stronger than that. Like I said, if you want the system to last, you can't just go balls to the wall at release. You can't. You're not going to sustain it, and that also gives your competition something to go off of and say, okay, well we can top that. So they got to be better than the last gen, but they can't show you the whole full potential of the system. So I do think there was room for more, but that also comes with working with more developers. Like you have to let other people, like when Sony went for the PlayStation 5, they put that dev kit in so many people's hands and say, what can you do with this? Show me what you can do with this. And that's where the potential is in any system. But again, Sega would do that, Nintendo wouldn't do that. There's certain things, like they said, with their image, they don't want. They are totally fine with the audience they have. I don't remember a time where Nintendo said we want to reach a different audience. I never, and I've played Nintendo since '86. I never remember them going in a different direction. I know it was pulling teeth to get Resident Evil 4 released on GameCube. Had to be.
Yep.
Because that's not the direction they want to go. And if you know, like they didn't do that too much, after that. There were times where they could have had different games like that. And they were like, nah, we good. We good with this Mario Party or whatever, So
It seems like they
as
have
far
like
as far as
just a few people over there trying to get adult games, and every now and then they get a win, and then it doesn't sell bonkers, and the rest of them go, see, this is why we don't do this.
And you know what? I think that was their whole downfall with the GameCube. The GameCube was a powerful system, and the concept was good. But even just the little disc, that was to appeal to kids. You know what I'm saying? That was all to appeal to kids. But if you ever played any of the games, because I had a GameCube, of course, Resident Evil 4. They had another game called Burnout Paradise. That was a gorgeous game, man. That was a beautiful game. And they had a mode on the game where you just really just drive, you hit top speed, and you crash into a bunch of cars or whatever you could stack up, and it replayed it, and it replayed it slower and slower, and it just showed you the explosion, the cars getting bent up. So the machine had power. It had promise, but I think like you said, the way it's sold, they were just like, nah, let's abandon this. I think PlayStation kind of ruined the market like that. Everybody wanted a drop like PlayStation.
Yeah.
And lightning not gonna strike like that twice. It's gonna strike better, or it's just gonna be worse. And I think that's why Nintendo abandoned that. So yeah, to that question, yeah, I think there was still potential, but they're looking for the next big thing.
I would say, and here's a funny fact, right? Um, outside the PlayStation, um, outside the PlayStation, the Saturn, and the Nintendo, guess which other console sold in the millions? The Panasonic 3DO.
Right. But wasn't the 3DO also kind of the luxury console space, or was that
3DO was a luxury space
Yeah.
console because it was halfway point between a Philips CDI and like the next thing, because it was not cheap. I'll tell you that. Remember, Nintendo. So if we're talking about pricing, likely Nintendo probably would have eaten the cost on the PlayStation and made it a $199 console. Remember, that was a big deal, not passing the $200 mark. Right? So you had the Saturn that debuted at $399. The PlayStation pushing $299.
Yep.
And the 3DO with a eye-watering $6.99. That
$6.99
was
USD in the 90s.
in the 90s, bro. Yo, you had to be an executive to get that joint. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, an executive or street pharmacist, you know.
That's right. Now,
Why you shaking your head?
I'm saying this. I'm like, wait a minute, but I had one. What does that make me? Oh, now that's not it. That's not that and the 3D and the what's it called, the Neo Geo.
Wait a minute.
Gold.
No, we got to really talk about your past here, brother. Well, hold on. You had a 3DO and you had a Neo Geo when they were new in the 90s.
Yeah.
Man.
But we're gonna gloss over that. So, when you have that mix,
Mhm.
and you're again, like if this was the Nintendo PlayStation, the 3DO. So let's push the price down on the PlayStation. That makes it really attractive at $199, right? But just like BiggPicc says, you're not gonna get the same caliber game
Or the
Probably
same
gonna get-
games.
or the same game. You're gonna get a little bit more production out of the Sega Saturn, and then you have the 3DO being the third horse, which is weird, right?
3DO becomes the
If Panasonic
super adult console.
And remember, after that they had the what is it? They had another 3DO.
Oh, we're cutting out somebody from that.
What
Does that mean
Atari,
does
Jaguar?
that mean the Jaguar 64 doesn't die on the vine, or does that still
The
die?
Jaguar may have, and that's the thing. It's a 249 console, right?
You have
So
the
it's
price
like-
for the Jaguar 64 right there, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Nerd.
So it's a 249 console. So it's like you're right between the 3DO and it's the third console. It literally is in terms of household, affordability.
Mm.
So when you have that console and God forbid, Atari didn't feel the need to go out of business and not Bandai, Hasbro didn't purchase them at the time, it may have done something. And I'm not sure if the viewers are aware, but Atari is definitely not dead. You can go to Atari.com right now and buy cartridges, buy consoles, buy a handheld.
Yep.
I
hear that
full swing.
That 7800 plus
Well,
is
they
selling.
still do really good overseas, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They still do
They're
really
doing
good
well.
overseas. Yeah.
Okay. So
having the
go ahead.
Atari as the third console, or the 3DO being having that third horse, being a well established company or well established thing, I could see in BiggPicc. I'm not sure if you had the I'm pretty sure you played around with the 3DO once or twice. The quality of the games, and I don't think people understand. I will put it to anybody today and say, first gen 3DO games were leagues ahead of PlayStation games. Gex was amazing on CD.
Yeah.
Like Street Fighter 2,
First Road Rash.
Turbo. Yo, that thing was a near perfect arcade port. When I say near perfect, I mean like pixels maybe, and maybe like one or two audible sounds. Outside of that, everything was perfect. It was a perfect port. So it's just
They made a good point, that's also what pushes the consoles, especially back then, the price.
Mm-hmm.
There were consoles that were better than a Super Nintendo or, you know what I'm saying, a PlayStation, but no parent was going to give a 10-year-old you know what I'm saying, an Atari Jaguar or something like that. That just wasn't happening. You know, it's the same reason why all these kids want PCs today, and nobody's buying them. Their parents not buying them PC. You're gonna get this Xbox
Hold
Series S,
hold on to this
or
Nintendo Switch.
yeah, we're not giving you no, because you don't take, every control you got stick drift. What you gonna do to a PC? Like, the smart parents know not to spend too much money for their kids in that sense. When we were kids, when we actually went outside and played, we actually were destructive. We took apart toys and stuff. Yeah, we had to get the Nintendo. We had to get something that was price friendly and durable. You
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to get these premium consoles like this. Those the consoles that he talking about, the 3DO and all, those were premium consoles. Those were, you, like he said, you had to have money to get those consoles.
Yep.
You're not just, and they weren't just lying around in the store. Like, you wouldn't get that from Walmart or no Radio Shack or nothing like that. You had to find those.
You remember mail order?
You had to find those. Was that?
Remember mail order systems? Back in the magazine, you call the number, you do the credit card number. And in a week or two, maybe, that show up on your door. Cash on delivery. Like, yo.
Yeah.
Anybody born
back then.
after 95 probably has no. I probably said a bunch of words that make no sense to you. And that's okay. That's what Google is for.
Parents, get your kids get your parents' permission.
Right?
Yo.
Exactly.
$3.99 a minute.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, hell no.
Okay,
And
so
you know what's funny?
what's up?
Also, and I feel like PC is still going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, PC was there.
It would have never gone away.
PC was there from the get-go.
Yeah.
People forget, like, they mention the Commodores and some of that stuff. Those are really meant as PCs, Commodores, Amigas. They were PCs that you could also game on. People forget that.
If
Don't ruin a what if episode now.
No, I'm just saying, like, can you imagine if, like, Konami or any of these other companies were like, you know what? We had this demo, didn't work out on the Nintendo CD or the Nintendo PlayStation. Let's just put it out there for PC. And we had Metal Gear on PC.
Yeah, that's possible.
That would be like, to imagine going to your school, you know what I mean? Popping that disc in, and then you started, and you're like, wow, Metal Gear Solid 2, and seeing like this amazing demo.
Well, people forget about that. Like, somewhere around between like 93 and like 96, there's this weird thing going on with consoles. And I'm trying to remember. I think there was one of those things where PCs were taking over kind of vibe. Because right around that time, Virtua Fighter was on PC, even though it's a Sega property. Twisted Metal 1 was on PC, even though that's a Sony. Like, they were hedging their bets, making sure they had a PC release just in case that wasn't just a fad. It was really going to take a market. Only one not doing that really was Nintendo. But, like, everyone else kind of made sure they had a foot in that, you know? So that's a real thing you mentioned. That could have continued.
I'll be honest, man. As much as I love gaming, video games, consoles, I would have been a full PC gamer from start to today if I wasn't afraid of mouse and key. I never was a fan of mouse and key.
You could plug a controller into all of these things.
Listen, no, back in the day, that wasn't man. I used to play Duke Nukem. That wasn't an option. Now, I didn't know about it.
I mean,
the PC we had, it wasn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you needed
Prince of Persia and stuff
game
like,
port.
All that was
yeah.
All that was mouse and key for us.
Yeah.
I didn't have that type of tech, so I'm playing Prince of Persia. I'm playing Duke Nukem. I'm talking about the black and white side scrolling.
Duke Nukem before Duke Nukem 3D. Yeah.
That was all M&K. So I'm like, I like it visually appealing, but I don't want to play like that. I just didn't want to play like that. So
I was an old Atari head, so like I had that one stick flight stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I had my PC, it was mouse, keyboard, flight stick, all the way to the right. So that one stick was the one thing I used to play most of the shooters.
Wow. Nerd.
that was an idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just
nerd.
wasn't there though. I
Yeah.
just wasn't there, man.
That was back when games were like supports gamepad parentheses with game port.
Yep.
Like that, there was no USB yet, so there was like sound cards or an add-in card would have a specific game port that a lot of PC gamepads supported back then. And again, if you ain't got the cash for that, or your PC wasn't bought with that, ain't no controllers.
I never even knew PC had the potential that it had. I was on like Myst, Age of Empires. Like I wasn't on what I should have been on. I'm gonna just say that.
I mean, let's be real. Myst was what was Myst the? It was credited with the one that broke 1 million sales first, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think that was the game that first cracked 1 million sales. I think that game was what started that PC fad around that area. It was like Myst hit 1 million sales. Everyone was like, whoa, 1 million sales on PC. Hold on now. Wait, we need to start putting stuff out just in case.
Yeah, Myst was a good game and still playable today.
Okay,
so today you can go and play it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna mess with you two PlayStation heads, real quick.
Yeah.
So if Sony is no longer funding initiatives for their own console because it is no longer their own console.
Right.
This is now Nintendo first console. Here's something that's going to hurt some of y'all. You potentially don't have Polyphony Digital.
Oh.
You potentially don't have 989 Studios. Right. Look at the faces.
That's a problem.
That hurts, doesn't it? That hurt to even hear.
Problem.
Look at you.
That is a very real problem. But I'll hit back.
Mm-hmm.
For every Polyphony Digital, you had a company that made hard driving or Test Drive USA. Like these were like those were before that. For those companies, there was actually I think a Ferrari Testarossa game.
Yeah,
I can't remember what. But before Polyphony Digital, there was this semblance of let's make a very realistic simulator. Unfortunately, it turned into like triangles going down a road. What looked like a polygon road and really sharp edges and things like that.
So does that mean Sega's driving games, Daytona USA, Sega Rally, do those flourish more?
Those flourish
with the absence of a Polyphony Digital?
Yeah, because like at the time, if I'm not mistaken, you will have Sega GT was a really good I would say driving experience game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not exactly a simulator, but it was pretty decent. You did have so you would have other people who would fill that void, but it would be amazing to see like where those developers would have been, because if their hearts were in it, likely they'll go to a company that will lend towards them creating their passion.
Okay, so you have
that's
that.
Tough, man. That's a tough.
It hurts, right?
Why you had to say no 989, man? That's what kind of hooked a lot of people though. Like with Game Day and all that. That's what kind of got a lot of people on it. So it's hard to think about that not even jumping off, man.
Because if I look at it, where's 989 Studios games list? Let's 989 Studios games list. Let's just Cool Borders.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal 3 and 4. So that means potentially Twisted Metal stays with its original dev.
Mm.
Because it was,
that's not bad.
yeah.
That
So
ain't terrible.
we still ended with Twisted Metal. 2 Extreme. I loved 2 Extreme. That was them.
Extreme was good.
Blasto, the Jet Moto games, the MLB games,
Come on.
NCAA games, NFL
So-
Game Day. Spawn Eternal was them. I mean, that's a third party that could just end up with anybody. Wait a minute. Oh, 989 is a renaming, so they were Sony Interactive too. So yeah, you still probably don't get Twisted Metal at all. Warhawk.
Ooh, that hurt.
Mm.
Yo.
Oh, wait. I'm not done yet. Siphon Filter.
Oh, that's bad. Yeah, that's
Buster Groove.
I remember Buster Groove.
Yeah, this so all the NHL game days, all the NCAA game breakers, World Tour Soccer Series, a Formula 1 game, so a lot of sports titles. But okay, hear me out. I don't think we lose so much on the sports titles front, cuz remember, before Sony took the ball, Sega had a pretty decent sports lineup for a good while.
Division called Sega Sports, bro.
Yeah.
Sega Sports.
So I think they still exist more so.
Yeah, I would say Sega really revolutionized sports games. If you think about the basketball games, if you think about the boxing games,
yeah.
I told you this before, Reaper. Joe Montana Sports Talk. Before that, you didn't see a game like that. There was no game like that anywhere. You know, with actual commentators talking throughout the whole game about what's happening on the field at that point in time. So I would go as far to say Sega revolutionized that, and they've done it not once but twice. Look when the 2K era came up. That was Sega. You know what I'm saying? That was them dealing with, was that was on Dreamcast, right? With the NBA 2K and the NFL 2K, ESPN 2K Sport, like they did it not once but twice. So,
yep.
I could see that.
So
I agree with that.
Here's the thing: I don't think we lose all of these, right?
No,
but I think we lose a large portion because they're not going to get the same funding they got when the PlayStation existed.
They probably wouldn't have, but like to lend to BiggPicc, or Visual Concepts are the same people who made 2K Sports.
Yeah.
So to see those 2K games flourish, that would have been big. Especially the football contract would be huge.
So,
right? But
you think EA still doesn't snap up that football contract?
So,
does that change?
Where would EA go?
Where would they go? I'm glad you said that.
Where would they go? So like
with no PlayStation, where would they go?
There was no PlayStation, so they go to the
Nintendo.
Nintendo going to be like,
they're the sports house for Nintendo.
I don't see that. I don't see it. I think
they were. So like in the cartridge generation, they were. When you move to the disc generation, it was the PlayStation. So like you wouldn't have, so in terms of licensing alone, then can you imagine EA forking over 40% of their revenue to Nintendo?
Well, they didn't probably remember, EA is the same people that didn't even fork over proper licensing fees to Sega. That's why their cartridges were different in the Genesis era. They pressed outside of Sega. They had that with yellow tab, whatever nonsense on all their games. It was a EA official game. It wasn't a Sega official.
Oh yeah. So to see that, when they're to see that, and then go to on the Nintendo, they'd have been like, Nintendo probably would have been like, all right, we're the only game in town. You need to pay us 50, 60%. A larger chunk. they would flinch on that. Sega would be like, yeah, you can make your games on our console. However, we have a game studio, so you know what I mean.
Do what you do. If it succeeds, it
Do what
succeeds.
you
If it
do.
fails, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Here's another major title, right?
Yeah.
Does Final Fantasy VII release on Nintendo hardware, or do they go Saturn? Because now there's no PlayStation.
And that's a rough one, because I think there were games that were already made for, I think it was the Nintendo. It was already made for the PlayStation. I'm not sure if it was Secret of Mana, or it was a couple of Mana games. It was I think it was, but there were some RPGs ready to go, right? To have that switch over to Sega Saturn, they would have, okay. So to have that switch over to the Sega Saturn and the Sega CD, or even Sega in general, already had a very healthy JRPG, background. So to have that, I wouldn't say it would have gotten lost in the sauce, but it would have been a different experience.
Is it?
However I would describe that. It's such a hard thing to say, because, like,
I don't think it is.
no, I think
I don't think so. Sega had their share of RPG. Didn't Dragoon? Didn't Legend of
Yeah.
Dragoon come out on
yes,
But
it was
Yeah,
on Sega.
I think it would have been okay.
It would have been
But what
okay.
Dave is
It's just
saying
that,
is it was already for PlayStation, correct? So
well,
it may not have been developed.
no. That's the thing.
no.
Final Fantasy up until the CD era was locked in with Nintendo. Square Enix.
It was. They had a license for it.
They had two things going, right? The license fees, which nobody liked, and two, Nintendo's cartridge format they were going with was too limiting in space. So they had a technical reason and a financial reason. Then Sony's like, we don't have this limitation. You can fit 700 megs a disc. I still remember the hype. It wasn't necessarily PlayStation hype. It was Final Fantasy hype. The fact that it would be a Final Fantasy for the first time, not on Nintendo hardware. I think it was EGM at the time. I think. I'm sure a magazine nerd will correct me. I remember reading the article. They played a beta. At the time, they were amazed. So like, this game is on 2 CDs. That's how early it was, because the final was 3. They're like, it's 2 CDs, only possible with CD technology, will never fit a cartridge, will not fit on, I think Nintendo's console wasn't even out yet when this article dropped. Nintendo next console's still going to be cartridge, so it can't fit on there, can only happen on CD, and it happened to be the PlayStation.
And that was two discs, right?
At the time of the article, when it finally came out, it was 3.
Oh, okay.
So, but they're already saying it's 700 megs and we filled 2 discs already. We not done. We can't possibly fit something this epic on a cartridge. So now if you don't have the PlayStation, Sega is a CD player, and now Nintendo is a CD player because they're still making hardware with Sony. Does Square Enix decide to stay with Nintendo and pay the higher license fees? Or do they go to the other CD player in the market, which is Sega? Because they're a big enough RPG brand by themselves. I don't think Secret of Mana, I don't think, I'm forgetting, Panzer Dragon, I don't think any of those are big enough names to wipe the juggernaut that is, like, we have to remember, this is mid-90s Square Enix. They are a household name for RPGs.
True.
I think with the nature of the game, like, I think it would have had to go to Sega. I don't think Nintendo would have been interested in, because I haven't played that game.
Really?
I haven't played Final Fantasy VII.
Wow. That's a rarity.
And from the earlier Final Fantasy games, at that time I wasn't into RPG games. I wasn't into games like that.
Not a
Like I
single Final
tried that
Fantasy in your
Dungeons
Super
and Dragons.
Nintendo. Not a. I'm not. If I look through your Super Nintendo library, I won't find one Final Fantasy game in there.
I didn't play it.
Damn.
I probably
So
borrowed it from somebody and didn't play it. But just from what I heard about the game, I don't see Nintendo picking that up. I don't like just the nature of it and the contents of the game. It's adult themed. I don't think they would have picked it up. But
Oh, so you think the
I mean, you're
content
right.
would have
It
been
is. It,
older?
it
yeah.
was a juggernaut. There was excitement about the game. You never know.
So
Mm-hmm.
here's a fun fact. I keep going back to the. So when it was released,
Mm-hmm.
or when it was when it was coming to release, it was being sold in Japan. It was like the hype in Japan was easy. It was going to be easy sell. It was telling. They said that Sony struggled to sell this into the North American market because North American markets didn't
Yeah.
appeal to those type of games. So like they had to do Sony and Square Enix had to do a promotion overseas for this game.
Y'all remember
To
the
really
first
sell it.
ads, right?
Yeah,
They pitched it like a movie. They weren't pitching it
They
like a
did.
game. They basically took most of the opening cinematic and said, "This is a video game."
yeah.
Yeah.
And at that time, that cinematic.
Yeah. That's what sold it.
It,
That's what
just
sold it.
just to read the first part of the wiki page. While its success in Japan has been taken for granted by Square executives, North America and European markets were another matter. As up to the time, the Japanese RPG genre still had a niche market in the Western territory. So Sony, due to the PlayStation struggle against Nintendo and Sega in the home console business, they were already struggling at that point. God. So to get to that point and then sell a niche market game, that was tough.
So you think
So
without Sony's financial backing on ads,
it would have been a big problem. So if Nintendo was not going to push the game, it wouldn't have happened.
so we would have gotten a Final Fantasy
Japanese?
VII
Yeah.
that wasn't RPG benchmark. Because let's be real, it became the RPG benchmark when it came out.
Yeah. Correct.
Like everything was grandiose, had to have cinematics. Like that was the turning point. It was like if your game was telling a story and didn't have cinematics, immediately points off after that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to have cinematics after they did it. Before, some people just throw up text, a wall of text. You're good with those. Here's a backstory. After that, you'd see it like too much reading in the intro. This could have been a cinematic.
Hey, somebody asked me right quick a trivia question one time,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to test y'all, see if it's right or if
Oh, I'm gonna
y'all know the
fail.
real answer.
I'm gonna
Sure.
fail. Mm-hmm.
So this guy asked me. He said, "What was the first video game to have cutscenes?"
To have cutscenes, period.
Right, and I didn't know. He said, and he told me this. I never looked it up, but like I said, maybe y'all know. He said, "I'm sure you've played it. Everybody's played the game." I said, "No, I don't know."
Probably
He
Dade
said
would
the
know.
answer to the was that
Give Dade a second. He probably
You're
knows.
talking about like a cartridge? Are you talking about
First
cutscene?
First game to have a cutscene. Gameplay stops.
one of the first games to have cutscenes. He said that he told me that the answer was Ninja Gaiden.
Yes. I was
But
gonna say
okay, so but I thought about it, I was like, so no, because it had cutscenes, right? Like before and after like a chapter. And I thought about it, I was like, so no game before that had a cutscene, and I'm thinking like I can't think about it. So maybe y'all can think if there
And
was
what
another game.
year did
But this
Ninja
was
Gaiden, the first
Ninja
Ninja Gaiden?
Game was like what, 88, 87, 88?
Yeah.
Because you have to think, right?
I think it released in America 89, I think.
You have to
Now,
think.
okay.
You had to have room to store the assets for that. So you had a couple things. You had to code it, and you had to have the room to store the assets. So that might have been the right point in technology to start scripting sprites to take control and enact something. It probably would have been hard to do that before that.
So here's the deal. You got to think of those games, those times. One, you're struggling with storage.
Mm-hmm.
Two, on that bit, not many games back in those days had storytelling in that form.
That's true.
The character would come in, hey, Mario, in text, the princess is in another castle. You know what I mean? That was as far as cutscenes went. You know what I'm saying? It's just character, bubble, and that was it. When you, and to clarify, Ninja Gaiden, the NES game, had cutscenes. Ninja Gaiden, the arcade game, didn't have those cutscenes unless you went to your continue screen, where Ryu was going to have his chest opened by a saw blade or a bomb or something like that. That was pretty much it. You didn't have those type of things. So to see it, it was kind of cool. I'll say that. I enjoyed it back in the day.
Ooh.
But I remember actually playing when it first came out. It didn't dawn on me at that time. I was like, oh, they're telling a story. Nice. You know what I mean? Outside of that, no, I wasn't even paying attention to it.
So I'm hitting Google now. Because I have to. Because I don't know this.
Yeah.
According to multiple sources I've clicked through, the first ever cutscene in a video game, this term's probably very loose here, was in 1966, called a Sumerian game, which featured a series of still images that told a story of two ancient civilizations fighting for the control of Mesopotamia. That was probably so basic that most people never even considered that a cutscene.
It gotta be, man.
But I guess, yeah, you're not in control and things are happening on screen. It's a cutscene, yeah.
Yeah, if it's telling a story, yeah, if it's part of the game.
The first pre-rendered 3D cutscene was 1983. Interstellar was a Laserdisc video game.
Okay.
And then the next one was Star Rider. Oh, they're both developed around the same time, so they're saying the credit bounces between those two. Oof.
What?
So
you're actually looking at it?
Yeah. No, I'm not looking at a cutscene. No, I'm not doing that to myself live. But I guess the first mass-produced one was probably the Nintendo. Was probably Ninja Gaiden, because I mentioned one for 1966, the Sumerian game. What the hell did this even release on? This was probably a computer game that took 18 years to load. Oh, by the way, most of the game was text. Like, what are we doing? One of the earliest of computer games. Yeah. Was developed between 1963 and 1965. You can get it on Steam right now for $5.99. I'm not recommending. I'm just saying, if you like that piece of history, you can go get it. That's interesting. So then the first mass-produced one, probably still the credit goes to Ninja Gaiden. because those credits, those aren't on common releases. Laserdisc video game and a computer game from the 60s.
Well, like you said, it's loosely. The
Yeah.
term is loosely a video game. Like some people, I don't know why, but some people don't consider what you just said as video games. They don't consider nothing from 66 or from 79. They don't consider that as video games. So,
Well, I'm sure somebody who played it from back then beat the bricks off them for saying that. That was their childhood they messing with.
yeah. But to your point, that's how Final Fantasy did get sold. I don't think I seen a commercial that actually showed gameplay.
It was all the cinematics.
I remember the commercials.
You know
I remember the commercials.
It's all the cinematics.
How much they spent?
How much?
They spent, I think, 10 million on in Japan for promotions. Spent 10 million for promotions in Japan. I think 10 million in another region. They spent 20 million in North America.
That's all primetime TV ads. That's all Saturday morning cartoon spots.
It was a budget of 40 million just for marketing. That's a lot of money.
I don't think they
depleted that.
Yeah, I don't think they spend that on. You're right. Without pushing from someone like Sony, I don't think they spend that.
The budget for the game, 80 million.
Okay, I still think they spend that.
Yeah. Develop the game. Yeah, make the game.
The dev cost still happens.
Spend half that cheddar on marketing.
Well, then, okay, so here's the thing. If they spend 40, let's say it's 40 mil to make the game. Square Enix right now is talking about games are too expensive. They're going multi-plat. Do they go multi-plat multiple decades earlier then?
Yeah. It would. That's the only way that makes sense. Like, put it on, because remember, it came out on the PlayStation and PC. Same time. Like, practically same time. Not many people talked about the PC release. A lot of games back then came out on PC and console.
Yeah, because there was that small PC gaming boom in the 90s where people thought it was going to eclipse. Again, I think that was Mist's fault for, breaking 1 million sales. Okay. So now, in the wake of this, we have 32-bit, 64-bit generation slightly delayed. We have no Polyphony Digital, no 989 Studios. Square Enix goes multi-plat. No PlayStation. What? Okay.
No analog stick.
Well, now, does that still happen, though? Because Nintendo pioneered
Microsoft.
that.
Yeah.
No, but Nintendo did it first.
The N64, yeah.
I think Nintendo still does that as their, they always have a gimmick for every console. I think they still have a gimmick.
The Sega Saturn had it with Nights into Dreams.
Oh, yeah, Nights into Dreams, the 3D space control. So I think analog still happens. Does the dual stick become the standard? Now, that's the different part. Because that was Sony.
Right.
I could reach for mine right now, but no. So Sony did that because everyone else had just one stick. Yeah, there we go, Dave. Thank you. I'm sure BiggPic's controller somewhere near him. He looks over. Yep. See,
it's not a Sony though.
Oh, damn! Somebody clip it. He's a traitor.
For the PC, man, I got
You could have plugged your Sony controller into it.
I never use my Sony controls on my laptop. Only Xbox controls. I don't know why.
Damn. They got you
right, man.
They got you. Yeah. Okay. So dual analog sticks. So what does gaming look like going forward? Because everyone kept doing one analog stick. Do we ever end up with the dual analog stick standard without Sony pioneering that in 96?
No, all right. That's the thing, though.
Or was it 95? When
I
did
will
the DualShock
yes,
launch?
we do. It's just that it's funky because you got to remember the N64 controller had two analog sticks.
No,
It's
it had
just
one.
weird.
Where was the other one? Was it the one in the center?
Is the little nub nibble
Where?
in the middle? It's kind of weird.
The yellow.
Yeah, but there was just one stick.
Nasty.
You said dual.
I'm just saying, it's kind of weird.
If you hold a if you hold the controller straight up, it looks like it has a schlong. It's weird.
Oh, it's just funny holding it. It's just a little weird.
Cause yeah, I don't know. Okay, what
There's that
DualShock year of release, right? That was 97. Really? 97? I thought it was 97. Okay, 97. But that may not be a thing because that was a PlayStation, right?
Oh.
So we grew up in an era with single analog sticks?
Actually, no, that's a lie.
What?
There were dual analog sticks.
Are we talking flight controls?
Flight controllers.
Mechs, flight controls.
controller.
Yeah. I mean, there was one for the Saturn, but it was meant for Lucky. Thank you for that clip. Perfect. It was meant for controlling mechs primarily. Remember?
Yeah.
So it was not really a controller. It was two analog sticks.
It just
like
needed
full blown
to have that one person to finally
figure it out.
The idea, like, take these controllers, make it smaller. You know what I mean? Where did it finally?
I agree. I think eventually it would have came up.
It would have came over.
It would have.
Yeah.
Okay, so delay in dual analog controls. Let's call that a delay then. It still happens, not at the same time.
That's true, because remember the first PlayStation controller, no analog sticks.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So analog is delayed. 32-bit delayed.
Totally.
No polyphony, no Gran Turismo, no Cool Borders. Twisted Metal's probably, if it exists, is a multi-platform title. It's not exclusive. Square Enix, it becomes a third-party distributor.
Yeah.
What happens to Crash Bandicoot?
I didn't want to.
Right. Not another one.
The classic. With the.
I could see Crash is Naughty Dog, right?
Yeah, Naughty Dog. So does Naughty Dog? Because where does Naughty Dog go, right? Because Sonic is Sega, Mario's Nintendo. Where do you put Crash?
But Crash, remember that was not they didn't own the license for that, so it could have gone anywhere.
Yeah, I could see Crash on Nintendo.
So they become a multi-platform platformer.
Yeah,
I almost got tongue-tied saying that.
That's what they are now, right?
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
I could see Crash being on Nintendo, but not a game like what's the game? Nathan Drake.
Yeah.
Oh, the Uncharted series?
Uncharted.
Yeah, Uncharted. I can't see that being
no,
on
Nintendo.
Nintendo.
That doesn't come out anywhere.
No.
Here's
it. I mean, it's not really too violent. It's not terrible, but
no.
But Nintendo, it when you're trying to sell something to Nintendo, you got to impress them right then and there. It either has to line up with their interests, or it has to be something groundbreaking where they're like, okay, we want to do this. Other than that, they pass on. Nintendo pass on a lot. They do. They pass on a lot of stuff. They just really confident in their product. No problem. They're really confident in what they offer. So They're not pressed to carry any new titles or any new, you know.
So, okay, Tomb Raider did release on
Definitely not
both.
going to Nintendo.
Did release on Saturn and PlayStation. That's just Saturn now. Never ends up on Nintendo hardware.
Saturn and PC.
Saturn never ends up on Nintendo.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think even with Sony not in the market by themselves, them being a Nintendo OEM essentially,
Yeah.
I still think Tomb Raider does big. I still think it becomes a cultural impact,
I'm sure it will, but
even without the PlayStation.
A minute, yeah, it was gonna be big anyway. It's just that, yeah, the first cutscenes, seeing Laura Croft come in, shoot 2 Doberman pictures, wouldn't have happened on Nintendo.
Nintendo don't do pixel titties. They don't do it. They don't do that.
Wait,
Getting out
wait,
of the boat?
wait, Bayonetta.
No, getting out of the boat back in 1990 something.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so you saying at that era? Okay, yeah. Okay, I see you.
Yeah.
I see that. Okay.
When at the time,
No,
nah.
not happening. No triangle titties for Nintendo. Okay.
None. They didn't even like the outfit choice for Cammy, Street Fighter and all. Like they real funny, man. But with that, I'm sure they said, okay, we can make money. You know, we got to draw the line somewhere. We're going to make money, so we'll let that slide. But we're not going to do too much of that. Lara Croft, I just would have had a whole damn mechanic jumpsuit on to play that
Yes.
game. But
Speaking of which, like, yeah, I don't think much of the King of Fighters games or Fatal Fury games came out.
Mai Shiru by herself.
So no,
with the what is she like double D swinging low when she's just standing still? No.
You remember that on Nintendo, Super Nintendo, if I'm mistaken, they didn't even do the full King of Fighters. They done a game called Fatal Fury, and it was just Andy Bogard, Terry Bogard, and Joe. It wasn't the full roster. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if y'all remember that.
No, Fatal Fury was its own. It was a Neo Geo title by itself. It came out before
King of Fighters. But it was on Super Nintendo. That's what I'm saying. They never said like we're gonna put.
Oh, the King of Fighters roster.
A King of Fighters game. You're right, because some of the characters is like nah, we ain't gonna go there. We ain't gonna go that route.
I mean, shoot,
Samurai Showdown. Nope.
Oh, with the blood, with every no, you could have gotten Samurai Showdown. It would have just been green or purple. It wouldn't
sweat.
Man, listen. Look at the games they had. Like, okay, Killer Instinct was a, that was a
thing. Killer Instinct. If you can you imagine a fully arcade faithful version of Killer Instinct? Because I do have the NES cartridge, the SNES cartridge, to have it actually out on the Nintendo PlayStation. That would have been big, because remember, that's Rare software. So for Rare,
they would have pulled it off.
They pulled it off, and if they stayed a Nintendo or an American Nintendo company.
Yeah. So I also, speaking of Rare, I think GoldenEye would have done a little bit better on the Nintendo PlayStation.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, you wouldn't have gotten that.
Been a little bit better on there. But that's what I'm saying.
You would have had
choice title.
You'd have had as good as that game was, but now with all the data you could fit on a disc.
Yep.
Cutscenes. Real cutscenes.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have.
But like, if we talking about the fighting games, King of Fighters, Nintendo had they had Street Fighter. They did bring on Killer Instinct, but then they like, okay, we gotta go back down. Then here comes Clay Fighter. I don't know if y'all played that. Like,
I remember
that's their lane. That's what they do. So it would have been hard. It would have been hard to see that take off. Like, it would have been better. It would have been so much better the graphics and all, but still, what are you giving the people? Like if you look at Sega Saturn, if you look at the other side of the street, they say they were offering too much. And then everyone that got turned away from Nintendo at that time, what you think Sega gonna say?
Come over
Come
here.
right in.
Come on over, bring it on over here. We got you.
So, okay. Let's go to Dade's point. It's a 2-horse race for the most part, right?
Yep.
Through the latter half of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that the Saturn's high introductory price, which would probably still be there for a year or two,
$299.
do we think that's enough to have stopped it from being a contender with Nintendo? Or does the fact that it has more teen and adult content hold it regardless?
For that era, I think it would have held it down for that era.
I agree.
And I also think what came after that, which would have been the Dreamcast, I think it would have had the impact that the PlayStation 2 had.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, like you just look at it today. I know we're talking about yesteryear, but look at it today. We got Nintendo Switch 2 coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What really says I gotta have this console? To a real gamer, not to a kid, to a real gamer, what says, oh, the Nintendo Switch 2, I gotta have it? Nothing.
Oh,
the first game I seen advertised with that console was Mario Kart.
Yeah.
They doing the same thing. So it would have been easy for Sega Saturn to coast on by them, drop the Dreamcast, and not bury them, but just get way away from them.
Take the mainstream
3DO.
lane.
Anybody that wanted to step up could have stepped up and they would have been last. Nintendo hasn't really been concerned with their placing in gaming since Sega overlapped them in the early 90s. They competed, but people with the hardcore gamers like, nah, we want to be over here. And that's what gaming has trended to all the way up until today. They're like, when you think about video gaming, you don't think about doing it in a family aspect. You don't think about doing it in a kiddie aspect. There's games today that we play, and what do we say? Why are you in this lobby, kid? Go to sleep. Like it's not really for kids anymore like that.
Why your parents let you on this?
Right. Right. I mean, I know we talking about Sony don't exist, but think about all the games, the Grand Theft Autos, everything. We like, why are you kids on this?
Grand Theft Auto still comes out regardless. That's a third-party studio. I mean, sorry to harken back.
Nothing to do with that. You already know.
Yes, sorry to harken back to last podcast, but yes, we did. What if GTA 3 had come out on the Dreamcast? But yeah, GTA 1 and 2 for home release would have been PC and Sega Saturn.
So in this topic on this show, that's the only way for them to go.
Okay.
Because Nintendo looking at that like, yo, what do we can't produce this to kids. Okay, fine. Your loss.
Okay. So then the next gen's coming. We already know Dreamcast is there. Nintendo, I'm not so sure if they go GameCube. Maybe they still do because Sony's still their OEM, right? They're going to come up with some CD, some disc-based console. We don't know what it would be.
Guess what?
What?
PlayStation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo PSP?
A handheld.
Does Nintendo use Sony's hardware to?
Because you're already in it now. You got discs. You're doing discs now.
So there's some sort of disc-based small Nintendo. So it's just the next Game Boy.
Yeah.
But it's a disc-based Game Boy.
Yeah.
Do we think Nintendo having access to Sony's R&D, if they continue another generation with Sony, do
Remember,
they
they
put a
had that.
DVD player, an actual DVD player in the GameCube then? Or them being
Um,
Nintendo says, nah.
so therein lies the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to go right back to my original statement that Nintendo is extremely protected. So they did have, um, you might have to look this one up. They did have a disc, right? Um, and even the Nintendo 64 had the 64 disc drive DD,
DD. I don't think that ever
right?
went did that even go mass production?
Oh, I can't recall. That I cannot recall. But um, it was when you look at the Wii U and the GameCube, they all came out with there was there's this proprietary disc that they used. The GameCube used the GD-ROM or weird.
Yeah.
It's a 1 GB disc. Yes, but they're going in a direction that is more protective, and all this to say that they're trying to secure the media, right?
Yeah. They don't
What
want
was
bootlegging.
the huge problem with the Dreamcast was bootleg.
Yeah.
They didn't protect the media enough,
Yeah.
right? So you would probably, yeah, and that was one of the things that the in the GD-ROM was its primary purpose was to um, curb video game piracy. It didn't. It wasn't 100% foolproof, but it did prevent a lot of it for the time. It made it harder, more difficult for people to copy this.
Yeah.
Fast forward nowadays, you can get these ROMs anywhere.
Yeah. So,
So you
mhm.
in that same conversation, we also got to talk about, just like we talked about maybe the Nintendo PSP. We also got to talk about, since we're talking about what could exist, we also got to talk about what may have disappeared. The Nintendo DS was a good handheld, very good, sold really good before the Switch. You got the Game Boy, you got the DS, then you got the Switch. If Nintendo takes the PlayStation concept and they go, do they do the PlayStation 2? Do they do the PlayStation 3? And do they get away from the DS and the Switch and those consoles? Do those disappear?
I think from a business perspective, the original Game Boy sold far too much for them to touch that market a lot. Because even for a while, to take it back to how they were without our theory, right?
Yeah,
Every mainline console had to have a way for you to plug in one of the portables games into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Pocket, whatever, was their cash cow. They made more in every hardware unit sold, and they sold more units. At some point, it was almost like they were just in the home market to still say we're here as an advertisement for the handheld. Because remember, some N64 things, they were like, oh, by the way, train your Pokemon here to use
I
them
was just about to say
here.
that. Can you believe they're still playing that? Like the Pokemons and all, they still playing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
it leads. I mean, and we're at the nexus of it, right? The Switch is the point where they had to merge the mobile into the main line because it made no sense anymore having the main line when the mobile is what it was. I think the mobile doesn't get touched as much as we think because the original Game Boy just did too well.
118 million
Yeah.
units sold.
Yeah, I think it did too well. I think
Game Boy Color, by
yeah,
the way.
that's just the color. Yeah,
That's just the color.
the Game Boy since '89, it stomped on the Game Gear, the Lynx, the Nomad, and these
Nomad. Oh my
and
god.
these were all technologically superior, but
Mm-hmm.
they just got everything right as far as sales and marketing, and there was nothing anybody could do, even as popular as the look at this man, Neo Geo Pocket, technologically superior,
Yep.
did not outsell the Game Boy of his generation.
Yep.
The PSP
Now, was that a price? Was that a price issue?
at
Is it
some
a
point
price
at
issue?
in the early days it was. The original Game Boy
Okay.
was dirt cheap.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it was dirt cheap, and it
Still
was
works.
sturdy. Yeah, that's nice. It was dirt cheap, and it was sturdy too. You could hand it to a kid. They could drop it on the ground. You'd feel bad for the ground it landed on.
heck yeah.
Like
Wow.
the original '89 Game Boy survived tank fire. Like there's one in a museum. That sucker still turns on. It's all melted around. It still turns on.
Heck yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that thing was a tank, and then they just never lost their momentum, as it were, going forward with it. So I don't think whoever's, if they're smart, in charge of the business at Nintendo, lets whatever's happening on the home console touch the portable. The portable, I think, is that's their cash cow.
It
Yes.
also helps that you can't get that on anywhere else too. I think that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that part of their history doesn't change. I think whatever's happening with the Game Boy, though, does affect whatever direction they go with a PlayStation part sourced initiative.
I would say I would partially agree
Mm-hmm.
in a sense that it would have changed a lot of things to have um let's say to have a Mario Kart, what essentially is Mario Kart 7, like
Mm-hmm.
years earlier. You know, you know what I mean? To have it in a weird, it's in this weird generation in which you would have people buying into a console or uh, buying into an experience like that is like eh, unique, if you will. Like, can you imagine all of the Nintendo CD game or Nintendo the to have a GameCube game in your hand, essentially, at that time,
Mm.
to have that Resident Evil experience in your hand, to have these things, it would have been an odd thing. But I think if Nintendo was bold enough to go with that new technology, I think they would have been bold enough to go with the handheld community. It doesn't mean that the two won't exist, right,
Mm.
at the same time, because let's face it, um, the Wii U and the Switch existed at the same time,
Same
right?
year, anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
The DS and I think the DS and the Switch existed at the same time. Um, and it wasn't until I think years later that they turned off like they turned off the Nintendo DS services.
Servers.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
think they turned them off in like 2014, not 2018, I think. Can't
damn.
recall.
So hypothesis then.
Yeah.
We're going into the year 2000, 2001, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sega's now the older, more mature crowd, right? They own that market. They Dreamcast. Nintendo's still Nintendo, just now with optical media, right? Without the dominant force that was the PlayStation brand, how well does Microsoft do when they drop their Xbox? Or is Sega or Nintendo now that dominant brand that keeps them kind of stifled still?
I think that the Nintendo Sony partnership
Mm-hmm.
will be too powerful to go up against solo, and then and Microsoft would have said, "Nah, if we did this, we're gonna get cut because look at the Apple Bandai pivot." Exactly. That is vacant Apple. Yeah, Apple and Bandai teamed up to make a console. It didn't do well.
No.
So
So
to
right,
to
because
see,
without Sony coming in and pushing both Nintendo and Sega around, there's no proof of concept that anybody could do it. I see your point. Microsoft doesn't take the gamble. You don't get the financial approval with the board.
yeah, we're doing pretty well with Windows 95, 98. Don't mess it up.
Because didn't Microsoft? Yeah,
I think
yeah. Go ahead.
that Microsoft doesn't even make an Xbox if Sony doesn't exist. I think the sole reason that Xbox came to existence is because they seen what Sony did,
Correct.
and they said, "Let us get a piece of the console pie." They were already in gaming. They already were prominent PC and all that. I think they said, "Let's get into this console market." They did it. They're running with it. They're the top dog now. They went off a failed or rejected, not failed, but rejected concept, and now they're the top dog. I think we can do it better than them. And I think if Nintendo worked with Sony and kept that concept, I don't think we see an Xbox.
Mm.
I don't think because there's nothing for them to see, and that's just my opinion. I don't think
I
there's
see it.
any example for them to see to say we can do that. Let's do that. I think they stay in their lane. They stay doing what they do. Maybe pick up some devs to make some games strictly for PC. That was going on already, but there with Nintendo not picking up every potential dev they can, that gives them potential to work with Sega or just Microsoft PC or whatever. So I don't think the Xbox comes to pass. That's just me. I've always seen Microsoft competing with Sony in the console. Like they've always done that. Sony hasn't competed with them. They've competed with Sony all these years. And I think without Sony doing their thing, I don't think Microsoft gets into the console market.
Mm. I could see that. So no Microsoft. They stay background software platform developer for Sega.
Yep.
And it's not like they even did a lot of work there.
I think eventually Microsoft Studios, all that comes to pass. Like, they probably gonna get into it solely like that. But as far
As
as
software.
console, yeah, I don't see it happening.
I guess that means into the
They trying
online.
to exit right now. I mean,
Yeah.
can you
Third party
let's be
everything.
honest. Yeah.
So that means we get used to friend codes a lot earlier in life because it's Nintendo and Sega. Remember the Nintendo friend code process to add somebody?
That means okay,
That means no.
like Nintendo online stuff.
Yeah.
Like
That
instead
that
of PSN, you'll have Nintendo.
that means for the console space, the UI design and the culture stays Japanese driven instead of, because to Microsoft's credit, they brought the online experience unified to home a lot earlier than everybody else did. Sega had online capabilities, Nintendo did, but there wasn't this central hub, home chat, party chat. That was a Microsoft thing. That was a culture they brought from the PC space and
Yeah.
consolified it. We don't get that then.
No.
At least not on console. The PC stays as it is.
We have 2 Japanese companies developing our online experience, and it's going to be weird. It's just
keep in mind their idea of the online experience. Sony has done this and Capcom has done this, and it's very anime influenced. That you're running around this 3D world with your virtual avatar. Yeah. What did Sony call that in the PS3 days?
That was the home PlayStation Home.
PlayStation Home.
PlayStation Home.
The Nintendo had their Meebo. Was it Meebos?
Me.
Their whole thing about how the digital world should interact is that you have a actual avatar. So you would have to go to your friend's probably virtual space with your avatar to start a game. Like they abstracted
don't they
it so
have
much.
That? Isn't that a thing though in Japan? Like the it's the dance avatar things. They have a network for that.
I believe they do. So, Tiger Prime, how you doing? Yeah, they do.
So I mean that's kind of like I'll go as far as to say that's kind of like culture for them. So
yeah,
but that culture now influences the rest of us because they're our providers for that experience at home.
Yeah, like what is like the whole Franco thing still stinks. Like
I don't think Sega goes that route. I'm gonna be honest.
That'd be horrible.
Because remember, Sega had experience briefly running an ISP, SegaNet. Right. So I think they get used to the username concept from then.
Yeah.
But I still think, I mean, look at how Street Fighter handles the Fighters Hub. They still want you to run around as an avatar. Another one, Guilty. Who develops Guilty Gear?
Atlas.
Atlas is out of where?
Japan.
I think they're Japanese, but I want to be right.
Yeah.
And their multiplayer interface is what? You run around with an avatar, you walk up to a arcade machine and your friends avatar. Like they're very big on that virtual representation of you to interact with the space. You can't just, here's a username, click username, join game. Like for some reason that
why do you think that is?
I think it's very much to do with their media they've consumed at that point. This is very much kind of an influence off that cyberpunk jacking into the system era that their anime was influenced by the time and their manga was influenced by, and that seemed to have seeped into everything. Whereas we sitting on the internet since the earliest households were having it in the 80s when you phone and you put the phone on the modem to modulate. Like there was this piece to listen to it. I'm going to sound old here, but we had that IRC chat room experience developing alongside our games, whereas the internet experience came to them after their fiction had already taken off without it. Mm. So you had the fiction leading the way as opposed to the tech leading the way. Whereas here we have the tech leading the way and the fiction kind of follows to an extent. We still have science fiction, telling us far off in the future, but we're very much sitting in the development of the internet era as it happens and dealing with its limitations. Whereas they're forcing the tech to meet their fiction a lot sooner. Right. Probably the most backwards way to explain that, but we're gonna roll with it.
No. I mean, like, if you were gonna take like the Nintendo, the PlayStation experience, online experience as an example, create your profile, you create a username, start to play a game, you go to the lobby of the game, if you will, and you see who you're playing with. And you basically add whomever is the ones that you like. right? You send those friend requests out to the ones that you like, and then you see them populated in your friends list. It was very flat. If it wasn't until I think they didn't have party chat for like a couple of years
Really?
until like yeah, they did not have party chat. You can text each other and stuff back and forth, but you couldn't just get into a room and chat with each other.
See, I missed out
I
on
think
that.
that's
PlayStation?
on PlayStation
We're talking about the PS3.
on yeah PS3 on Microsoft. It was a lot easier to party chat, if I'm not mistaken. So Nintendo, let's roll it back. If this was Nintendo, I don't even know if you'd still be talking. That's weird. Like, you'll have your list. I don't think you're gonna have this robust, online experience that we're kind of used to. Not anymore. No,
Not there anyway.
no,
So Sega's left to develop that on their own.
pretty much.
Oof.
I agree with that. I think Nintendo would be proactive in saying what could go wrong, and they wouldn't touch it.
They won't touch it.
I agree with that.
Yikes.
And let's drive it back home to what Pick said. The majority of the community, and let's face it, for Nintendo, are kids. So it's just creepy old men speaking to kids.
Oh, yeah, you want to avoid that at all. Yeah.
Yeah,
want to
they're being
avoid that
proactive,
completely.
man. They're not
Yeah.
gonna let that happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, wow. So online space.
No online.
You have
Not
it,
really.
but it's owned by Sega.
It's owned by Sega,
And
if you
Sega
wanted
was
that-
pioneering it.
because it's
But-
understood that your demographic on Sega would probably be 13 to 30 something. You know what I
What
mean?
about PC? When did it start on PC?
From the beginning.
Yeah.
As soon as home use had internet access, there were
Yep.
people trying to do D&D text-based adventures together online. Like that was
Even-
inherent to the culture.
Was it the folks who made Doom,
id Software.
id Software, having the big Quake cons,
Yep, the LAN parties.
like LAN party. I mean, like BiggPicc. Take a football stadium, put a whole bunch of folding chairs in there, and mad like extension cables. That's what you got. Got a whole bunch of people bringing their PCs there, like playing.
It was
Like-
the custom car show for computer nerds.
Is it 16 on
people-
16 or 8 on 8? I can't recall.
I don't even remember now, but people were showing off or whatever they did. And back then you couldn't just buy a custom PC off a shelf. People were
Gotta
taking
make
Dremel tools to the side of cases or getting good with spray paint just to differentiate themselves.
it. Dog, what the PC catalogs, like phone book thick. You know what I mean?
Buying parts. But they would show up, the QuakeCons. They would show up to these events.
Yep.
So a lot of the early PC stuff stays PC culture. It never bleeds into the console space. Because Microsoft's the one that brought that culture into the console space.
I remember, did I think it did have, I think I may be mistaken. I think Counter-Strike had like com chat.
If I remember correctly, it did.
Yeah.
So, but even back
was
then,
hated.
don't forget the early days of TeamSpeak, the early days of MSN Messenger being left online in the background so you can talk with your friends, AIM voice chat. Like before Discord, there were other ways of Skype even. Just leave the call running in the background.
Oh my God.
And you would game with your friends. Like all of that that was a culture Microsoft saw budding on PC and just unified it, put an X logo on it, and released it. It's not that they created it, they just unified it under one pane of glass, as it were. But you don't have that person doing that anymore. That's
Nintendo
interesting.
too conservative, man.
So Sega would have to figure that out.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Man, Sony kind of saved the gaming, man. They saved.
They brought it to the culture we know now, right? Because it's not to say shooters online wouldn't take off, because Quake 3 Arena was still out on the Dreamcast. That still happened. Doom released on Sega consoles. Well, Doom released everywhere. Let's be real. Doom released on every and anything, just censored on Nintendo hardware, because we've established now Nintendo does that, right?
Yeah.
I think they weren't even Wolfenstein. They turned all of the Nazi soldiers into zombies.
Yeah.
So, like, it's what they did. We've established their very protective culture, right? So Sega would have to figure out what would popularize online shooter culture on console, because they would be the household for it.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one. The first video games to include voice chat.
Mm-hmm.
I have to credit BiggPicc for this. Were Seaman and Alien Front Online on the Sega Dreamcast in 1999.
So Sega still becomes right. There was the mic attachment.
Yep.
Mm.
So Sega's still the forerunner in that, and they just have to become
Players
the it
would have
guys.
to subscribe to Sega Net on the Dreamcast Online, and then they could join the voice chat. So yeah, Sega would have been the first one.
Does
Sega
that mean Sega Net? Oh.
Yeah.
That means Sega Net becomes that other. We end up. Okay, hear me out. Y'all not gonna like this. We end up in an era, a whole generation early, where paying for online for a console service becomes the norm.
Yep.
Because Sega Net takes off.
Yeah.
Wow, that happens a generation earlier.
Yep.
That's depressing.
Somebody gotta do it.
Yeah, that's depressing. Yo, from 1999 to 2025, somebody's paying on top of their internet bill, mind you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Sega Net used to be an ISP, but once you go broadband, they're not an ISP, right? So they're just a service on top of. You're paying for a service alongside your internet bill to play online with your friends.
Like a bad marriage.
Yeah.
KXI Network, thank you for the raid. Welcome into the podcast.
Hey.
And for everyone coming in, think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. The premise of the show. What if Nintendo had released the PlayStation project they were working on, or SNES-CD project they were working on with Sony, instead of breaking their contract? What would the landscape look like going forward? Just throw that out there. Let y'all think about that. Welcome in. Sit down. Have a drink. A little chit chat. Let your imagination fly.
Trust me, you're gonna need the drink.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, if you really think about what's being asked, you gonna need that drink. I
it's
wish
so
I'd have
weird.
got mine now.
So the next thing, the software, Roger Wilco. Roger Wilco came out, released May 3rd of 1999. And that was on PC. Okay, when I say this, it's gonna come out weird there. Linux, FreeBSD, Windows 95, Windows NT, and Mac OS. It was practically platform agnostic at that time.
Everything.
Everything.
Te-
And people, this was before GameSpy,
Mm.
right?
wow.
So
GameSpy.
GameSpy,
I remember that
GameSpy
service.
bought Roger Wilco. So then we had GameSpy and TeamSpeak. I remember I had GameSpy, a GameSpy account. I set up GameSpy on my computer, and that's how I used to communicate uh, with my friends
You remember
online.
PC games would actually have like a certified GameSpy logo stamp to let you
Yeah.
know it officially worked? Oh,
hmm
I remember that era.
Yeah.
Unreal
So
Tournament, Quake 3 Arena.
we would have had um we would have had SegaNet games with with party chat. Then we would have had PC games with party chat. Nintendo people would have to have. It would have been a weird situation where they would have to have their PCs and the game right next to each other. You know, the console
Mm-hmm.
and a PC right next to each other, so that they can do some type of game chat.
Yeah, not having
And
that's such a
Trillo.
Trillo. That's such a weird setup to.
Yeah.
Okay, if anybody here has a Switch, what's their voice communication method like now? Is that still not a
Yeah.
thing?
Nah, that's a very good question. I don't think I've ever used it at all.
You can talk to other players.
Yeah.
You can talk to other
My
players.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, my son.
on certain games,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Oh,
they got Fortnite, and you could talk.
Oh, and what you call it?
so
They
it's
did it. They did that with Mario Kart way back with the Wii.
so wait, it's a per game thing. There's no like
Yeah.
Nintendo central hub to chat with friends.
Not that I know of. I haven't seen. I
No.
don't think so.
Wow, so they still don't do that.
And every game is turned off. You gotta turn it on. You don't just plug up and just start talking. Every game you gotta go turn it on.
So till this day, very protective of their demographic, their people that buy their console.
That is bizarre. So you end up
Nintendo PlayStation will be a very restrictive box,
Mm-hmm.
high in licensing, um, decent titles, pretty decent. You know what I mean?
yeah, Mario
But
starts looking
not.
good earlier. You get CD quality sound earlier.
Good graphics.
So
Yeah.
I could see the movie the Mario movie
Mm-hmm.
in the Nintendo PlayStation 2. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that
Because
era.
at that era,
Yeah.
it would have been solid, real solid, good quality.
That's a bizarre place to end up in.
Weird. I know when you think of it, like,
Here's another thing.
yeah.
So now you notice I keep asking questions, kind of pinpoints in different points in the timeline,
hmm
closer to modern era, right?
hmm
With Nintendo still being them and leaning towards customized everything.
hmm
Sony not in the picture by
Yep.
themselves. They're an OEM.
Yeah.
Microsoft not in the picture at all. They concentrate on the PC space.
Yeah.
Does that mean now that Sega becomes the one that runs into this hardware inflection point where they have to go to commoditized hardware? Or do they stay making custom stuff? Because that's kind of the complaint now of, the serious nerds, the hardware tech nerds of consoles. They miss the era where every console was wildly different because everyone did their own thing. Now, right now, if you were to gut an Xbox or a PlayStation, there's AMD logos all over it. They're using the same parts pool, as it were, right? There's slight differences here and there, but it's an AMD shop. Nintendo's the only one who went off with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Does Sega stay a custom shop, or do they end up in the same thing where they're using close to off-the-shelf hardware?
So Sega's always going to be doing their own hardware. As a matter of fact, they're still have their own custom arcade boards. Um, in, in Japan, that the games that they're developing there. But Sega, I think, will be. I think we're going to be in the same place we are now, where we're going to have a convergence where everyone has a. How did you, I think you usually say it better? Like everybody's going to go use the same template, the same framework,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just how they use that framework that's going to be different. That's all. How they customize that experience for their consumer base, that is different.
Okay, so you think it still happens, just not as soon?
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's just it's it's probably going to be around the same time, like where we are now, right?
Hmm.
It's going to be like, you know what? Um, back in the PlayStation 4 days, like Nintendo, let's say I'm gonna keep with the theme, but the PlayStation 4, they're gonna be like, nah, man, let's just keep this common hardware, right? AMD based, and we're gonna make this. But what is Sega doing? You know what? They're using Power PC. I think at one
They
point they
were,
were using,
yeah,
yeah,
PowerPC.
they're using Power PC. So they're sticking with that, or they're gonna switch from Power PC over to whatchamacallit, because it looks like and remember, who's driving that decision making? It's the developers. The developers are saying, look, we tired of making a game for this person, this person, and that person, and the game taking 3 or 4 years to come out because we have to constantly convert for this person and that. Nah,
Mm-hmm.
let's just do it one time. It's gonna say the only place that we notice, it's on the commercial. It said like Xbox, PC, PlayStation, blah blah blah. You know, call it a day. We don't want to keep making different games on different hardware.
So that still happens,
Yeah.
except for Nintendo.
Yeah, Nintendo. I think aren't they in the Nvidia
Yeah,
framework? Yeah. So
NVIDIA SoCs.
Nvidia, AMD. Yeah.
If it
Yeah,
ain't
but
broke, don't fix it. That's Nintendo. They're not fixing. They're
Hard
gonna keep
headed boy.
giving. Yeah, they're gonna keep giving new hardware and stuff, but they're not gonna take any leaps and bounds. It's like they're not hurting financially. They're not dropping off at all to make any significant changes like that.
nah, the Switch One
They're gonna
sold.
continue doing, so we're in a space where Sony PlayStation doesn't exist, and it's just them and Sega and PC gaming. As long as they're getting the piece of the pie that they expect to get, why change anything? You know,
Yeah. Agreed.
Sega, on the other hand, I could see them trying everything, and I could see them really working close with Microsoft to make changes if that were the case, if there were no PlayStation. But
Now,
if there was no Sony PlayStation,
I would say, and well, it all depends. Because they're let's face it, their first mistake was partnering with Microsoft. Um, if they went or followed Nintendo's uh, lead, it'd be weird to say, by building their base, their Nintendo PlayStation base off of Linux, then yeah, they wouldn't have any issues or very little.
So I have a question for
Microsoft
both of you.
altogether. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for both of you. Where do you think the majority of gamers would play if there was no Sony PlayStation? Would they have came up through those years, as Reaper said, the timeline, and just went to PC? Would they have split off to Sega? Because I can't see them being on Nintendo. I just can't see it. So
So
where would the core gamers be, and what would happen to the esports scene?
okay, actually, that actually lines up. The esports scene is two branches, really, right? Shooters and then everything else. So fighters their own shooters. Fighting was and now will stay Sega's wheelhouse because Capcom was very big on Sega hardware. All the best versions in the Saturn era, for example, even with the PlayStation being there, ran on Sega hardware. So without Sega being stomped out by the existence of a PlayStation, they lead that market. So they own that, right? I don't think they would ever buy, like how Sony bought one of the fighting networks. There would be no incentive to buy that if Microsoft never showed up. So the fighting tournament scene stays independent, right? Sega probably doesn't buy. Shooters, however, we already kind of discussed it. Dual analog sticks was kind of a necessity for shooters to become good and decently playable on console. Other than that, it always felt kind of off, right? You need something to move your feet and something to move the gun. You needed two sticks. Aim assist, whatever, that's a whole other conversation. You still needed two sticks because you had the mouse and you had the keyboard. You needed that translation. So that now, I'm not sure without the, because that's kind of the market Microsoft pulled into themselves. We are the household for Halo, Unreal when that was still around. We are that. I'm not sure Sega takes on that role because they wouldn't be looking for a niche as readily as Microsoft was. And if they don't, then that esports lane probably stays in the PC space where it was already blossoming. We already had the likes of Thresh Wong and Fatality in the 90s. These were already names in the esports PC scene. I think that continues to grow. Heck, even Call of Duty. I think that still stays Call of Duty. But people forget, Call of Duty, the first one, released PC first. I think that becomes now a PC first and centric release because there's no dual analog stick equipped console likely for them to release on and have that decent of an experience. They stay niche in the console space. That's weird to say considering where we are now with battle royales, right? But that probably would have changed where those are played. So Sega becomes where the edgy, mature people are, your core gamer, as it were, and the casual gamer. Nintendo owns that in more ways. Like, I think they have a bigger chunk of the pie. It wouldn't take till the Wii with the fitness games to, make that explode. I think they own that from earlier. Mm-hmm. Because Sony kind of took some of the casual and some of the hardcore. They kind of had that perfect Venn diagram where they got a bit of everything. Nintendo, y'all have been saying it without, they're hard-headed. They stay in their lane. Whoever they get. And I don't think they try to get the moderate casuals who kind of sometimes want to play a racing sim, or kind of sometimes want to play a fighting game, with a little bit of variety. No, you playing Pokemon, you playing Mario, you playing Pikmin, you playing what's that farm? That's what you here for. You playing Smash Brothers. Everything else, go talk to the other guy. We ain't got it. At least that's
Good
how I
answer.
see it.
Good answer. Good answer.
I don't know about Dave,
So,
but that's how I see it.
so, um, and I have to look at this as far as like
This
when, where
nerd
the
and his
games came out.
facts. Here we go.
No. So I go by
Mhm.
one of the most iconic esports events. Let's say Evo, right?
Isn't that the one Sony bought?
So here's the catch,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, and I'm gonna bring it up. Um, Fighters Evolution, or Evo, Evo Championship 2004, moment 37, Daigo versus Justin Wong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Street Fighter 3, Third Strike.
What were they playing on?
Exactly. So, at the time, it came out on Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PlayStation 3. So, like, let's say Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Xbox. We're talking about consoles. You want to get the best one or the closest one to the arcade. It would have been Dreamcast at the time, if I'm not mistaken. But people may have played they may have played on the PlayStation 2 version because of its sales, right? But and they didn't say exactly which console they were playing on. But if we're talking about Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter 3, yeah, I think it would have been on the Dreamcast, right? Sega would have run that.
Wow.
So to have those big moments, right? And to claim it and say, hey, yeah, this was on our hardware, right? I think the I don't think the esports uh uh environment would have changed much. Only in terms of sports where it would have changed. Like to have a Madden tournament from the time it was popular, like the until now, which console would it be on? You know what I mean? Nintendo PlayStation or Sega console?
I mean, Madden would still come out on Nintendo hardware.
May, but it, it's still this whole like big. So okay, Madden comes out on Nintendo hardware, right?
Mm-hmm.
How you playing online?
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm.
You want to play it easy or do you want to play it hard?
Got you.
So,
Got you.
so yeah, it would have been a Sega experience for
Mm.
online. It's
Wow.
mm,
You know what? And Dave made a good point. If you think about the Sega Dreamcast and you think about the graphics, it was ahead of its time. The games that were on Dreamcast, they looked the exact same on arcade. Crazy Taxi,
yep,
Ready to Rumble, they looked the exact same. You didn't see a arcade game and say, "Well, this looks better," and then you have the console. They look the same. The games look the exact same. The Simpsons game, the WWF is WWE now, but the WWF Raw Rumble game, all those games, Capcom versus Street Fighter, all those games, they look the same, arcade and the Sega Dreamcast. So I agree with that. That it would be an experience. You want to have the best experience possible. Yeah, you there for a competition, but you want to play on the best console. You don't want anything limited.
yep.
Based on how you train and based how you warm up and do your thing, you don't want to play on anything limited. You want something that's gonna be able to allow you to do what you do and get the best competition, bring in the best players. So I think Sega would have, or like you said, PC, but the console, oh yeah, Dreamcast would have had that on lock. I agree with that.
Oddly enough, 2004 Evo was the first one where they were not playing on arcade cabinets and they were playing on console because it was just um unsustainable to keep doing it on cabinets.
Lurching
So
those
it had
around, making sure they stay working.
exactly you've
Yeah,
experienced that firsthand.
yeah. We were at the tournament at DTN, and we sat down at a cabinet. We went to pull on the joysticks, and the whole joystick section of the cabinet just came back.
They didn't blame y'all for it?
Nah.
We got up and moved to the next cabinet next over. I'm like, yo, chill.
No, because we were wondering, like I'd push a button, it won't work. They would push a button, we're like, what's going on? So we're like, let's run around, maybe. And in that round, you start doing the motions, and the whole thing is just like, here we go, just following the joystick. The whole front of the joystick, like, this isn't screwed in at all.
Oh.
Ooh,
chill.
We got Brooklyn real quick. Ain't see shit, didn't do shit. We're going over. Somebody else sat down there. We just kind of looked at him like, how long is it gonna take? How long is it gonna take? Dude yanked on the joystick. The whole thing lifted. We're like, didn't take long. Acting like we didn't see nothing.
Exactly. Could have called it out. Yo, bro, what you doing to the
That'd have been messed up. Well, okay, y'all mentioned arcades.
Yeah.
So Sega stays as big as they were at the beginning of the 90s because they don't have as fierce a competition.
Yeah.
Everything that was kind of a first party title for the most part also had an arcade equivalent.
Yep.
Does the culture shift away from arcades still happen, or do we still see a stronger, not necessarily the same, but still a stronger sense of arcade culture because Sega's still likely still to release on in cabinet and at home? Because like you said, they're still doing it in Japan.
Yeah.
All the way until COVID.
Yeah, that would probably kill it, right? That would probably be the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Somebody cough on a joystick and you end up on a respirator for a week.
So it's funny now that
I took out BiggPicc. Like, BiggPicc is done.
Yo, I just caught that. I was like,
can you imagine you winning the match? I might have won the match, but I got the last one.
You won the match, but you lost your life. That's it. Damn.
That's messed up. I'm sorry, y'all.
Thank you. What's funny is that, okay, let's say, and we're now that we're talking about like some of these quality games, we're talking about tournaments, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Tekken? Where is it going?
It has to. Well, okay. Wait.
Okay.
That's not as controversial as you think. Bandai Namco, I think, because remember, it's a fighting game without blood. I think it's cross-plat.
You're right. It came out on the Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah, it's cross-plat friendly. That one is cross-plat friendly. That Battle Arena to Shinden. Oh, Bloody Roar. No, that's Sega only.
Bloody Roar.
You turn into a beast and start cutting up somebody.
But the popularity, though,
I think because Tekken was arcade hit first, I think it survives that wave.
You think?
Okay.
Yeah, because Virtua Fighter. I know where you're going. Virtua Fighter is a 3D fighter over there, but it's too technical of a game for the casual market.
Huh.
Virtua Fighter is a very technical. That's the same thing like Mortal Kombat's very popular because it's easier for a casual market versus Street Fighter, where even though it's popular, at a higher level, it's very technical.
Okay, so let's just repeat that.
Hmm.
If PlayStation, the Nintendo, so Sony had kept their contract with Nintendo and created the Nintendo PlayStation, Tekken would still happen.
Yeah, that's big, isn't it?
That's a weird thing to say. That's a strange thing to say.
What about Dead or Alive? Who developed that?
That's gonna be Sega, right? Okay.
Yeah, but who's the dev? He's right. Who?
Oh wait, yeah, I know it's not. I know that's not going to Nintendo.
We all know Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball ain't going on no Nintendo. That was not gonna happen.
But this is why this discussion is so relevant, because so much stuff would shift to Sega,
yeah,
or PC, and that would make Sega the top dog. They would still be in consoles right now.
Yeah.
Toei Tecmo.
Yeah, that goes multiplat. That just
Team Ninja.
That ends up on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's not Nintendo.
It's just okay. It'll end up on Nintendo with an extreme tightening of the chestal area and making sure
everyone's wearing oversized T-shirts and jeans.
Exactly.
Nothing jiggling. No jiggles. Wow. Everything's static.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird to think about.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird, man.
1996.
The more I think about it, like,
exactly. The more you think about it, like 1996, Dead or Alive. Which console is going to come? Not Nintendo.
Yeah. No.
Matter of fact, the original Dead or Alive, Sega Saturn, PlayStation.
So it was on the Saturn. It just continues. Yeah, it was already there.
Stay on Saturn.
It's weird to think, right?
So with a company like Capcom, would they divide their games like Resident Evil, Sega?
Oh,
and
here's the other thing. Dead or Alive was developed on Sega Model 2
arcade board.
Arcade board. So
yep. So it stays a Sega shop.
Yep.
Resident Evil franchise. So without that being,
Veronica came out on Dreamcast.
Mm-hmm. I still think, because Capcom is Capcom, right?
Yeah.
They follow the money for the most part. If Nintendo is willing to pay for an exclusive, I still think they get an exclusive. I don't think that changes. So if they want Code Veronica, all right, bet. You want RE4 and Code Veronica? All right, where's the dump truck full of money for you to get this? And when do we meet up with it? Oh, you don't have that dump truck full of money? I guess it goes out on everything then. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, like that. You can tell that's the way Capcom moves.
Yeah,
they follow the money, even when it's going to be a not so great release. I'm looking at you. Street Fighter 2 ports on hardware that should never have had Street Fighter 2 ports, that they will release any and everywhere if they can get a sale. Because let's not forget, they put out Street Fighter on consoles that had 2 buttons. And make your work with it. It was on the original Game Boy, which was black and white. I think it was on the TurboGrafx, which was only had an A and B button. It was on, I'm forgetting now. They ported, if it could play it at least a frame, they released it because people would buy it. Capcom is that kind of company, so I don't see the loyalties there, right? If you're not willing to pay for the loyalty.
Here's something funny. Nintendo 64 port was rumored for Dead or Alive.
Mm-hmm. But
it didn't come to fruition.
Why not?
And it was instead ported to the Sega Saturn exclusively for the Japanese market.
Yeah.
We all know why.
Some Nintendo dev was like, "Oh, this game, great graphics. Something right around this area. Why is there so much motion? What's going? Is that a bug, a glitch? What are we doing here?"
And the Team Ninja guys, I could see them like, nah, man, this is an adult game. You an adult?
Who does that? Who
Act
makes
like
games for adults? Who does that?
Exactly.
I don't know about the Switch, right? Y'all would have to tell me. I think Nintendo has tried at least once a generation from the NES forward, or Famicom forward if you're, Japan, tried to release at least one adult game. Just one or two. They dabble in, like, all right, here's one. It don't quite work. But
they do.
It seems like they dabble at least one.
Like Bayonetta is a good example of it. It is raunchy. It's a raunchy game. However, it's like it goes so far in a direction that you're like, okay, this is borderline. I would say, I'm not gonna say sex, but like this is borderline, like, right? To go this far in this direction with this game. And BiggPicc, we both know there are a lot of areas in Metal Gear Solid kind of sus. My man likes to show the bare back of a man's behind. You know what I mean?
I don't know what's up.
I don't know what.
CA says there are adult games for the Switch. Okay.
Yeah,
blur it out a little bit, but still, man, he be on it.
Well, okay.
It's just that, yeah, Monster Hunter. Yeah, and I agree with you. However, I think
Monster Hunter is not that adult.
No, but I think when we think of it, who is the market on the Switch? Who is the Switch meant for? So, if that market is of the demographic between 5 and 16, we're not going to see a lot of the games that are meant for 13 to 30 something.
Ooh,
this is weird market.
So, Dade, to your point, you're very right. Their N64. You said when they go adult, they go way adult.
Yeah.
Their N64 adult attempt was Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, that was a pretty.
That game, 1 was highly rated. Let's be real.
Yeah.
2 was developed by Rare.
It's just.
That was risky as fuck.
I mean, you have a character that takes, like, literally shoots poop out of his butt. I mean, like, he
was also a drunk.
Yeah.
Like, they had depictions of alcoholism, tobacco use, toilet humor, dark humor.
Okay. But let's dial it back. Even the attempts that Nintendo does, they don't market those games. It's no like they don't. You'll never see a commercial or
they won't
ad
market it
in a magazine. It's just it's on the system.
Yeah,
it's just on the system. Like even like Bayonetta, whenever it dropped, you seen it. Like you didn't see it on TV. You didn't see it in a Game Informer or that. You just seen it. Like okay, they got it for that. If you want it, it's like Nintendo saying, hey, if you want it, it's here. But they're not pushing that. So there's more than one Resident Evil game dropped on the Cube. I think it was 4, and I think it was Revelations and 0, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't market those. They marketed Resident Evil 4 like really. It was real limited. Then the game just happened to be a masterpiece, and it was like, oh yeah, it's here. It's only here. Then Capcom said, no, it's gonna be everywhere else too. We gave y'all the opportunity to break it out, and y'all didn't do right by it.
It's like
because the game got real popular once it got to PlayStation.
Yeah, Capcom was like, "You paid us. That's
Right.
not eternal money. You can let's calm down. RE2 outsold this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I'm looking now. This is completely AI driven. The ratio of Nintendo rated games tend heavily favored to E for everyone, but it's a significant portion of E10 title. It is there's a very small number of games that are T for teen or mature.
And
Very
you know
small.
what? There's nothing wrong with that. They are upholding for the unengaged, those not of this video game culture. They have become the safe bet. I buy Nintendo stuff for the kids. They don't need to research.
Right.
They don't have to think too much about it. Nintendo's for the children. Yes,
And they
Wu
don't have no
Tang.
competition.
I stole your thing.
Yeah, I could see
There's
that.
no competition for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see there like Sniper Elite or thanks for the link by the way. Yeah, there are a lot of games, and but at the same time, let's because
That's
we're
true too.
talking. So okay, put it this way. 1994. Do you think Bayonetta would ever come out?
Nah.
What
Not
year?
on Nintendo.
Not 1994.
Not on Nintendo.
Not on Nintendo.
Sega.
Yeah.
So wait a minute.
It's
So to CA's point, right? He says
Yeah.
there's 50 adult themed games. And by adult,
Sure.
we're not talking X-rated, folks. Adult just meaning violence, cursing, whatever. How many games are out on the Switch?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, so it's 50 games of
Oh, I see. In terms of ratio,
yeah. It's a minority. It's
that's a very small minority.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that minority is going to get even more exasperated by the fact that with the Switch 2, which is also compatible with the Switch 1 games, that's now 50 adult games on the Switch 2
Bayonetta
instantly.
was on the cover of Game Informer. Not which one? Not the Nintendo version. I doubt it.
94
But I
Bayonetta
could
would
be
have been on
wrong.
Sega.
I don't know everything. I could be wrong. But I stand on what I said.
No,
Nintendo don't market adult games. They don't. If there's adult games on any Nintendo platform, you read about it, or like they say, word of mouth. You hear about it. It's not. They're not. If they were to market that, it would go against their whole everything they are stand for. Everything they sell.
so
If you want those games, you have to find those games.
yeah. Of all the games released, so 50 on that list, as of January of this year, so far, I don't know which date in January, there are 11,975 titles available for the Switch. Only 50 of which are geared towards adults.
All right. So for the N64,
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you all of the adult rated games. There's 28.
How many games released for the N64?
Good question.
I gotta look right now.
Like how many games? Yeah.
N64 games. How many released?
Oh.
388.
So 388. What's the ratio of 388 from 28?
I'm not doing math, but that's a small number.
Small
It's
number.
more than the Switch's ratio, but that's still not great.
Right. All right. I'll tell you what. See, for the sake of expediency,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just call out the franchise. Right. Carmageddon. Doom.
That was multiplat. Also
Yeah.
multiplat.
Doom. Duke
Yeah.
Nukem.
Multiplat.
ECW wrestling. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mortal Kombat.
Multiplat. Gotta have it. Yep.
Quake. Right.
Multiplat.
Resident
Gotta
Evil.
have it. Mm-hmm.
South Park.
Multiplat.
Turok.
Gotta have it. Turok. Was Turok multiplat back then? No.
I don't think so.
I remember that being heavily marketed
Oh
for them.
yes, it was.
It
Because
was?
It was on PC as well.
Oh, okay. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So like, you can how would I put it? So when you're coming when you're thinking of Nintendo and M-rated games, these are well established games that are well established on other consoles that are just happen to be released on a Nintendo console. They're not going to take their chance on. I can't see out of the blue that Nintendo would take a chance and say, "Yeah, I'm just going to release Dark Souls."
Let's do a Leisure Suit Larry for Nintendo.
Ooh.
Yeah, dude, that's not
It
gonna
ain't
happen.
happening, bro. It ain't happening. I'm sorry. And then so then look at the games that you named. Some of those games, they look different.
Yeah.
Just like we talked about earlier, the Mortal Kombat for Super Nintendo, the Mortal Kombat for Sega. You can get different fatalities. You can get the blood code. Like some of those games look different.
Right.
So when you see the rating, it's telling you that we feel that this is not for children.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that his head getting cut off or it's a sexual theme or drug use. That's them saying we don't believe this. But when a PlayStation game stamps that, they're telling you this ain't for kids. When a Sega game stamps this, they says we're telling you this is not for. We know for sure our product right here on this console is not for kids.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, it's gonna be
Nintendo is telling you, I don't look. We got it too. You don't got to go get the other console. We got it too. But whatever.
Yeah.
If you're interested in it, yeah, we got it too.
Let's see GTA 6 come out on the Switch. Yeah. I'll wait for
What
it.
did they had one though? Nintendo did have one. Was it a Chinatown Stories or something?
Chinatown Wars?
Wars. They had didn't that come out for a Nintendo?
I think
platform?
the handheld. Let's see. GTA Chinatown Wars was released for PSP, DS. Whoo, Fire OS.
Yes.
Forgot about that. Android and
Nintendo
iOS.
DS.
Yep, Nintendo DS got
Okay.
a version of the Chinatown Wars.
I bet you that shit was so watered down. It couldn't have been.
Well,
like, come on.
Well,
Yo.
keep in mind it was top down, so the violence
Yeah.
is still not that. It wasn't you weren't over the shoulder. It wasn't third person.
Okay.
And
GTA
the speech between them
came out on the handheld.
on the handhelds. The speech between them, however, there probably was some censorship in the text because it was all text based, and I'm pretty sure I can't imagine. But you know what? Every now and then, we said it, Nintendo has loosened the reins once in a while. So maybe for something as big as GTA, kind of like for Mortal Kombat 2, they took too much backlash. They released a bloody version of Mortal Kombat 2. Maybe for GTA, they left it alone.
So
but I would not
GTA
be
is available
surprised.
on the Switch.
Which
the
one?
GTA trilogy.
See,
trilogy is
Because
available on Switch.
because it's so big.
And it's so damn old.
Well,
You
in
know
that
what I
case, it's also the Switch's hardware is to blame for that part.
Yeah.
The generation Switch that's going away is essentially a tablet from almost 10 years ago on the inside. That's why they have that complaint about the Switch being what it was when it released. It was already barely that generation as far as quality, and now we're how many years later, and it's really showing its age.
Yeah.
I think even their Mortal Kombat release, the one that just released,
Mhm.
there's tons of videos showing how bad that is on the Switch in comparison to everything else. Mortal Kombat 1 does not look good at all.
Mm.
All right, so to summarize, we potentially lose some fun memories of the 90s with first-time titles because Sony's hardware becomes Nintendo's hardware.
Yeah.
and thus we don't get Polyphony and 989 Studios in the same vein we do now. Metal Gear, I still think happens. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Metal Gear, I still think happens. Tekken, BiggPic's point, still happens. Capcom is still Capcom. You have your Resident Evils, your Street Fighters, your Monster Hunters. All of that still happens wherever it still happens. It's really Sony's first party initiative that started with the release of the PlayStation that gets wiped off the board. Then we lose Microsoft's initiative. They'd probably never buy Bungie. So just like in the last episode, Halo becomes a multi-plat release by the very nature of it, right? Our online on console experience becomes vastly different. And paying for online capabilities on a console probably shows up a whole generation earlier. Did I miss anything? That's where we are on that roadmap. And perhaps, perhaps, Nintendo focuses a little bit more on graphics. Maybe. I'm not saying they will. To BiggPic's point, Nintendo's Nintendo. They do what they do. But maybe they do. Just a tad bit. Maybe the Switch 1 doesn't live as long as it did. Maybe Switch 2 comes just a little bit earlier. Because it's looking a little rough.
Sega still makes consoles.
They did see that's the thing. And Sony, in a sense, is still making consoles. They just producing the hardware for somebody else.
And maybe that's a happy place for them.
Yeah. And I think we get CDs from, to Date's point, we get CDs from Nintendo from the jump. Like, we stopped seeing cartridges on something plugged up to the TV. What, 8 years earlier?
Oh yeah,
we'd be on the Dreamcast 4 right now, man.
Oh damn.
Oh
yeah. Look, they both zoned out. Yeah.
no,
For anybody listening to this audio only, both of them zoned out. Just thinking about that.
I'm picturing a smooth console with a seamless pocket experience with their memory card, where you can like do a lot of things. Like, Sega was so ahead of their time.
Okay, wait. There's a scenario I didn't hit with. So does Nintendo's hardware on mobile now get pressure from the VMU because it'll live longer?
Yeah. All right, I'll put it this way. If Sega put out a console now, and Sega's not afraid of like jumping and making something happen. The stuff that we're seeing with PlayStation now, it would have been something that Sega would have done. The stuff that we're seeing with the PlayStation Store on your phone, I guess remote play, all that stuff would have been done. I could see that. I can't see Nintendo allowing you to take your experience out of their console by allowing you to have remote play. That's not going to work. So to be able to take your phone or link your console to your phone, and whatever saves and things like that happen, like it's just fluid experience from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. If that is your gaming world, I could see that Sega would have something like that.
Like that. Okay. All right. Let's
all the Yakuza games.
Oh,
bro, I'm telling you, Sega would be king right now.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
On Nintendo's front, Sony's still their OEM, right? I think we see a Nintendo phone. Because remember,
yeah,
you wouldn't have gotten the PlayStation phone. You would have gotten the Nintendo phone.
Mm.
I can see that.
Their mobile landscape might be a bit more varied than we've even given thought to.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And then when you throw that gaming in that, Nintendo is they're just like Sega in a way. They're not afraid. They're not afraid to do something new and go off the grid. They will do it. They will go all the way off the grid. And
Virtual
a
Boy.
lot of times they hit. They don't miss too much. They
No.
hit.
I can only think of 2 flops. Personally, I only know of 2 flops. Virtual Boy, Wii U.
Hmm.
If y'all know of another flop from them, let me know. But I don't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when the Wii came out, there was people was like, I don't want to do all that movement to play games. Shit, 8 months later, like, where we find a Wii at? Where's the Wii's? Like,
Sold
y'all didn't want it. Y'all didn't want it at first. Then you seen people playing, getting out of their bed in a nursing home playing it. It revolutionized, and before you know it, you couldn't find it.
Damn.
That's their best selling console, isn't it?
Yep.
No, it's the Game Boy
s-
still, right? Or
I think the Switch.
No,
I think the
it's a
Switch
Switch now.
has eclipsed all of them.
Yeah, because
the Switch?
Yeah.
Switch passed the PlayStation 2 in global sales.
Yes.
Worldwide?
Yep.
Yep, worldwide sales.
So the original Game Boy, the Concrete Breaker, 118 million units. Nintendo Switch, I don't know what number they crossed with, but why are you giving me a chart? 146 million.
146 million units. And that's big.
That's a lot.
Because
That's good.
let's put it this way. That's Nintendo flexing and saying, yeah, we did that without being a multimedia platform.
Yeah, they don't have a Queen Mouse. The Wii U may not have
Raw
been
game.
bad as hardware.
No.
The Sega Saturn wasn't bad, but it wasn't a commercial success. Like it doesn't have to be bad for it to not succeed. It's you didn't get it. You released something that didn't have a market that wanted it. That's the thing. There was a misstep there.
Yep.
I think that console had the same fate as the Cube. They didn't push it like they should have, and because it didn't drop hot, they abandoned it. It didn't drop hot. Like,
yeah, Nintendo has a penchant for doing that.
yeah.
But Dade, what are we
when,
fighting with?
When
Is that the whole GameCube in the box?
The whole box, yeah. The Wii U box.
Oh, the Wii U. This guy.
Man,
Nerd.
what don't you have?
That's a good question.
That's the question. That's the only question. What don't you have?
I don't have the modern Xboxes.
You got what is it? Intellivision?
Intellivision?
What is it? Yeah, you got that.
Well, the Intellivision, you got to remember, played on the whatchamacallit. The television games played on the Atari 7800. So technically, I played Intellivision games on my 7800 back in the day.
Damn. Queen, your family might still play the Wii U, but it's a rarity of families that even have or have seen a Wii U.
I never seen one.
Yeah.
I never seen one.
And I'm pointing at mine right on the floor, right over there.
Because the Wii U released, and it was Dade who made me realize this.
Yeah.
Dade doesn't have an SG-1000. Dang. Sega SG-1000. That's... Who has...
I know something Dade ain't got. I know what Dade ain't got.
What?
A Gamecast.
Gamecast?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez.
I don't have that, no.
I know you don't. Come on, man. Malibu's Most Wanted. Gamecast.
Oh.
Y'all know. I know you seen
remember.
Malibu's Most Wanted.
No,
Seeing it and
No,
remembering it are two different things.
exactly.
whenever the black guy, I think it was Damon Wayne's son, when he met B Rabbit, he say he asked him about a game console.
Oh,
He was like,
Mm.
"You got a on Dreamcast?" He said, "No, I got a GameCast." He said, "Well, there's Dreamcast and there's GameCube." He was like, "Man, I'm broke, man. That's all I got."
it's like a GameCube and a Green Dreamcast taped together.
Yeah, something you got at a swap meet or some shit.
Yeah.
They doesn't have it. What is a SG-1000? What is that?
One of Sega's earliest hardware releases. It basically got wrapped into and re-released in an upgraded
Before the
form on the Master System.
Oh, yes. No, I don't have one of those, but I do have a Commodore 64.
No, N2, don't mention N-Gage. Don't mention N-Gage.
Yeah,
No.
of course I have an Engage.
He has multiple.
I have three. I have three Engages.
Don't.
And okay, I have two of the original taco Engage tacos, and I have the next year remodel.
When I met this man, right?
I
This
was
is
playing in Engage when he met me.
this is the nerd. He had an N-Gage. He had a pocket computer, pocket PC.
Yeah.
And he walked around with this bag with accessories for everything he carried. This man was not a joke about his mobile experience.
Yeah.
man.
I actually have a
Cool.
picture of me playing my PSP and my son right next to me playing Sonic on the Engage.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, my wife was like, that's when the problem started.
Damn. All right.
I wish I'd have met you around the time Reba met you. I would have appreciated you, sir. You would not be a nerd to me.
I couldn't say much back then. I I had a pocket PC. That's what caught my attention. I saw him with the pocket PC and I'm like, yo, that shit is rare around here. But I had to pull out mine. We both look at each other like, you exist?
Exactly. And all of a sudden, like, we started working with each other. It was like, yeah, it's quiet. Let's just play a game against each other. We started playing like Age of Empires against each other.
Mm.
Infrared points lined up.
Exactly.
Nerd bromance. I mean, we worked at a very nerdy place and we were still probably in the top 5 percentile of as far as
Yo,
technological
don't
stuff.
tempt me. They got a
Sega Pico.
1000 on eBay for 400.
Bruh, you can play those games on your Master
Bag.
System. What are we doing?
Bag it. Yeah.
And two, you created a
Happen.
monster. What the hell is a Sega Pico? Even I don't know what that is.
Sega Pico is basically okay. You have to have kids, right? So,
None that I know about.
think of the Leapster. Pico was like a learning platform.
Oh, I see this. Yeah.
Remember? So the Pico, they had, remember that one guy that had like Echo the Dolphin for everything?
Yeah,
Yeah, Pico, yeah.
I see it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have that.
So okay, yeah. So I wouldn't have that. Um, I bought my brother's collection. So Philips CDI, no, I don't have that, but I have two 3DOs.
Here we go.
I think. I think I have.
Tell us.
How do you decide what consoles you want to acquire? Is it just something you're interested in, or is it
I don't have
something you
that.
want to play a game on, or how do you know what you want to get?
Exactly.
OCD.
That's
It's OCD for
it.
him.
So we went to a game.
LI Retro.
Yeah, we went to a retro game show, and I knew I needed a PSP because I lost mine. So immediately I was like, huh, walking around like, you got a PSP? I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just, I had a case of games with me. I was like, you don't mind if I play? Click. I popped it in there, and then boom, there it is.
Now he got his PSP back.
I got my PSP back.
Look at this nerd.
You know what I'm saying? Got my PSP, got my Vita, got a lot of handhelds.
We
Got a
wouldn't
Sega
have.
What
Saturn.
about you?
Well, what drives me to collect?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Mainly things I had wanted in my childhood. That when I look back on my gaming history, I go, I still want to have experienced that. Um, y'all already know I'm very much a PC guy now, but that didn't become PC only experience till the PS2. So everything prior was fair game, but I was also a kid, which means whatever I can get for Christmas. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So decisions had to be made. Um, and I feel like, especially with the Sega stuff, I always remember looking on the back of the Sega. I'm like, oh, that bazooka looking gun, I wanted that. Oh, the Sega CD attachment, I wanted that. It's things I wanted, but never really come Christmas time focused on. And then part of me feels bad that I had abandoned Sega when the PlayStation 1 launched. You guys went Nintendo. I went from Sega to Sony. Because I was that kid that had the Sony Walkman, Sony earbuds. There was Sony audio equipment. You remember Sony audio equipment back in the day was a tower full of stuff. It was the record player, the tape deck, the receiver. Most of that stuff said Sony. Speakers said Sony. Like everywhere you look, Sony owned everything else. And then their marketing hit. I'm like, Sony can do no wrong if it's electronic. Like that's them.
Yeah.
So they got me on that. And what is it? It came out when I was 10?
Yeah.
The height of being impressionable, when you know enough, but you don't realize you don't know enough to realize you don't know enough. Like you don't realize you don't know a lot. You think you know everything at that age. And I was just full sail. Oh, 3D is the future. Sony owns this, blah, blah, blah. They got me. And now I look back on it, I'm like, yo, there are these Saturn titles. Yeah. And now that I know about technology the way I know about technology, I realize a lot of that was marketing fluff about Saturn not being capable of certain things. And here are games that I'd like to try that prove it. So and that's why I'm back on that.
Before you ask, yes, I have a Virtual Boy, and yes, I have a couple of cartridges for it.
Dang, it's nerdy.
I'm just saying,
just nerdy. All right, we're at the 3-hour mark.
Yep.
I think I've absorbed enough of everyone's time. I think we've gone with the scenario as far as we can. Dade, by the way, your Vita and your PSP, wouldn't it probably exist, given our scenario?
No.
It would be Game Boys. You'd have more Game Boys.
I'll have more Game Boys, but it'll be... So, and that's the funny thing. Like, let's look at that. They went from... We're back to a cartridge age because the medium is so cheap.
Yeah.
You have a massive amount of data on a chip, and it's cheap. So
wait, we could have had Game Boys running on Sony memory sticks.
Yep.
I think the PSP would have still existed. Just the game selection wouldn't.
PSP would exist, but then
it'd be a Nintendoized. It would be the Pokemon handheld of that generation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't mind. Like I wouldn't mind. Like that at that age, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Riding on the train and whatnot, like those long trips. Yeah, man, that'd be good.
Yikes. That means we probably would have seen a longer run of the Game Gear then. And it would have had a follow-up sooner.
I wouldn't be mad at like a portable Dreamcast. That'd be nice.
All right, it's time to
That'd
go.
be nice.
Yep.
That'd
Yep.
be nice.
All
'Cause,
right. So
they're gonna have me tweeting Sega tonight, man.
yeah,
Me
we're
tagging Sega. Hey, y'all need to get y'all shit back together. Get back in the game.
That's so. Thank N2 for this one,
what?
where he did mention or he did promote the idea, but that could be another topic discussion or something that we could put out on the webpage. Do you have a command for the webpage?
Just go to 2020gamer.com.
Okay. Copy, but it's on. So one of the things that N2 put out there was, what if Sega released the console today, right? And this is a quick one. I would say that it would be no different from what Atari is doing now with the Atari. If you go to Atari.com,
7800 plus.
7800 plus, 2600 plus, a handheld. It's just going to be it's going to be a nostalgic piece of thing, a kit. But even at that, they can entertain, and people just going to snap it up anyway, right? So, yeah. What was it? Well, you just showed me the other day that this company's still making cartridges.
Yeah. VGNY Soft, Neofid, limited run games. There's a whole market still releasing, and there's companies in Brazil making new Sega hardware licensed. So, heck, we're about to get the Sega Neptune we never got.
Yeah,
the 32X built into the Genesis. So, yeah,
there was a Marvel's Avengers arcade game that was supposed to come out, I think, for the Dreamcast, if I'm not mistaken. It's either Dreamcast. It's not the Dreamcast. It's supposed to come out for the Saturn. And it didn't. But this guy is porting it over. And
I mean, our last show, GTA 3, has been ported over to the Dreamcast. I was playing a game released for the Dreamcast. It was released in 2020, a few streams ago. So these things still have legs. They still have life.
And I'll tell you what, with my generation coming up with disposable income,
Look at, are you biting your lip over a console? All right, nah, we've been here too long. Nope. We've been here way too long. Nah, man. But I want to thank BiggPicc for coming through. Again, everybody check out big_pic, BIGG_PICC on Twitch. And that same spelling minus the underscore on YouTube. He has his own podcast series. This man's interviewing folks. He's talking about very deep dive intellectual conversations. That's why I had to have him on here as a guest. You see what the man's capable of. Go check him out.
God is good. God is good.
Yeah. Data is Venom. Been around since the inception of 2020 Gamer. Known this man far too long.
I thought he was gonna be like, been around since the inception of like Nintendo.
I thought he was going there too.
Like, hey, my man was here when Nintendo was selling my rice cooker. Like, yeah.
So I'm about to say Reaper and came unglued, man. I thought he was going there, man. I say, man, they just been around, man. They just been around.
Despite his appearances, he is a vampire, and that's how he keeps his youth. But he is older than everyone else on the panel today. But yeah, you can catch him on every platform. Dade is Venom. Venom has no O. There are no spaces.
Yeah, no.
If you want to, really get in his good graces, call him Daddy is Venom. He loves that.
Wow.
For some reason, people think the E in Dade is a Y pronunciation, and it's great. I find it hilarious every time. See, look how much he's enjoying it. Anyway, y'all.
People yelling out in the street, "Hey, Daddy!" Yo, no. Nah.
You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, on Twitch here on my channel as Reaper PC. For some reason, I am the sole arbiter of orchestrating this little get together because Dade doesn't want to do it. He's grinning because I get to do all the work again on another podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been great. Don't be surprised if you see BiggPicc on as a guest on another topic at a later date. We'll have him with full promotional material, of course, because you got to check out his content.
I'm coming back for them 90s games. Yeah. I'm coming back.
And if we ever discuss Fallout, expect him to be definitely on this show.
Oh yeah, my picture gonna be on top.
There you go.
Lead the way.
There we go.
I'm gonna lead the whole thing.
You think he's joking? He's for real. All right, y'all. This has been another one. I would normally do my usual outro, but that's a me thing. Dade, BiggPicc, is there any other places people can find you? You want to let them know before we out of here?
Everywhere. Think about it.
Well,
and I'm there.
In a few more hours, you won't be able to see me on TikTok. So,
yeah. I warned all y'all.
Search BiggPicc on all socials. You'll find me. I promise you'll find me.
With the color of this background right here, I'm like, wow, Fallout on Dreamcast and Saturn.
See,
good night, everybody.
Yep. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for coming through. We'll see y'all on the next one. This has been the 2020 crew, 2020gamer.com, on this 2020 Gamer Discord, on Blue Sky, on X, not as much as we used to be, on Instagram. Catch us there. Let us know what you think. Drop any and all ideas you may have for what ifs you want us to cover in the Discord. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Enjoy the credits. Shout out again to BiggPicc.